D. Mace Fingen and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan, David Janes here with you. Derek Mason will be along shortly, we hope.
Yeah.
So when Derek is on his way and he's going to be in right before the show starts, he texts us, coming in hot. So our phone vibrates in our little group chat before the show, and I'm expecting a coming in hot text from Derek Mason, but instead I got this, quote, got pulled over, maybe a little late. So Derek?
Been there. Had that happen. Have had that happen.
What's with our station and having car problems today?
They say things happen in threes, so like who's going to be the third of us to have something happen with the...
So Joe Rexrode missed the morning show today because he got into a car accident attempting to avoid a deer.
Oh,
he is okay, everybody. Joe Rexrode is A-okay.
Okay.
But he
that's the first thing.
But
that's
he did get into a car accident. And now Derek Mason being pulled over.
Oh.
So Jake Lyman, Connor Newt, if you're listening, one of you may have some car issues between now
be careful.
and 2 o'clock.
Yes, really. Let's be on full alert. I have a question about the deer.
Yes.
I actually in East Nashville, and we do not live near Shelby Park or anywhere close to the... I mean, we're near Shelby Park, but our house is towards downtown Nashville on that side of East Nashville. I had a deer and a baby go through my back alley the other day. I've never seen that. I've lived there for we have lived there for almost 25 years. It'll be 25 years in the fall. Never have seen that. I feel like this happened. So the question came up the other day, when you are encountering a deer that jumps out into the road, and unfortunately it happens, it's happening more. Like driving back from Ohio, I just noticed so many deer on the side of the road. But what are you instructed to do? Like seriously, from a safety standpoint? Because Joe, you just said your instinct is to avoid the deer, right?
Yes.
And you can't always avoid it, but sometimes avoiding it creates more danger, right?
Right.
If you're swerving into another lane or you're swerving off the road, I've always wondered that. Like, I don't know what I would do in the moment. But like a big deer can do a lot of, obviously can do some damage to your car.
I know what not to do.
We encountered the turkey.
I was about to say, I know what not to do when encountering a wild turkey.
Yes. And to
be fair, that turkey came out of nowhere.
I did a great job not having a full-on collision with the turkey.
Because it was heading right for me. Because it came from the passenger side.
I felt totally safe on the driver's side. But I don't know if a texter or two could help us with this of what should your... Like, obviously, you want to avoid it. You want to hit the brakes and hopefully you don't hit the deer. But, like, if you're in a really tough spot, what are you supposed to do?
Well, Derek Mason is here.
Yeah.
What'd you do?
Well,
oh boy.
Fortunately, I had a run-in with the fuzz.
You ran afoul of the law.
So this is Derek did not run into a deer or encounter a deer. He ran into the fuzz.
I ran into the fuzz.
Joe Rexrode had the deer issue. So just to clarify, we've had 2 issues this morning.
And it came to my attention as well as his that I may have been a tad bit over the speed limit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A
so
tad?
Just a tad bit. I mean, he noticed it. I didn't.
What's the numerical measure of a tad? We're talking 5 miles an hour, 7 miles an hour.
I guess anything over, 10, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was right at that threshold of 12. So
I on occasion like to try to find where that threshold is.
Yeah. And
so more than a tad.
I may have been a little bit higher because I was trying to get, but anyway, I ran afoul with the fuzz, and he pulled me over and asked me.
Did he say, "Wait a minute, you're Derek Mason"?
No, he said, "Where you going?" I said, "I'm headed to work," and that's why I was I would have my what do TD call them? Get somewhere shoes. I had my get somewhere tires, and I was trying to get somewhere. And so we struck up a brief conversation, and then we went back. And he came back and he said, "Well, it has come to my attention, Mr. Mason, that you like to do this frequently."
Oh,
Ooh.
I said, "No." I said, "That was years ago. That was passe. That was so far."
That was the old Derek Mason.
It resets
Yeah.
after a while, doesn't it?
That's what I thought. I thought that, but that was the old Derek Mason. That was the guy that,
Yeah.
you
You're
can't.
You're an older, wiser Derek Mason.
Exactly. Absolutely. I'm much wiser now. So much, so much so it was
This
only
is more of a hiccup and not a pattern.
absolutely. There we go, Willie.
well, let me ask you this question.
There we go.
So in the NHL, when a
Yes.
player runs afoul of the Department of Player Safety,
Yes.
that player is considered a repeat offender for 18 months following his most recent incident. So if you
Okay.
are suspended
Mhm.
2 years after your most recent infraction, you are not considered a repeat offender. But within 18 months, you are. So would you be considered a repeat offender?
Yeah,
Derek
because I
Mason?
think I got a last speeding ticket may have been 2 years ago,
Well,
a
18
year
months
somewhere.
would be a year and a half.
Yeah, that's what I'm
might
saying.
just
So
be-
I'm,
you might
I'm,
be
I'm
just
right
under the
there.
wire. Yeah.
I'm right there. So that was a hiccup, like Willie said. It was just a hiccup. That's all. So, but hey, listen, he did his job, and I did my job. The crazy part about it was, when you're getting pulled over, or anybody that has gotten pulled over, which is probably 85% of the population that drives for some reason, and you're on that far left lane, the fast lane,
Mhm.
and then the cop comes, and they you know what? I think they take drivers courses to know how to pull up on you so smooth, and then just sit back there. And I think they got a timer on their watch to say, "Okay, I'm gonna drive behind him for about 10 seconds, and then I'm gonna flick my lights." He drove behind me for about 5 seconds, flicked his lights. But then as I'm trying to get all the way back over, I'm thinking like, okay, I don't want to get off here because it's going to be hard for me to get back on. I don't want to get off on this exit because then I got to double back around and get back on the freeway. So let me keep on going until I have a spot where I can park. He's safe. I'm safe. But then I can get back on the road once he does what he has to do. Well, I'm still driving. He hit that. I was like, okay, let me pull over.
Okay, I'll go.
All right, my bad.
Just a sec. Yeah, my bad.
My bad. I'm sorry. Let me pull over.
Understood.
No, but I mean, the guy was nice. So he did his job. So
Ron,
there you
on our,
go.
Ron on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says, "Guys, you're right. It comes in threes, and this is number 2 for you, D Mace. Earlier, you were in a car accident with a young lady. Remember?
Yes,
Be
you're
careful
right.
because you've got one more coming. LOL.
God, Final Destination,
Didn't
huh?
have to bring that up, bro.
Exactly. You got one more ticket. It's coming somewhere.
To be fair, I don't remember which Final Destination movie it was, but the one that starts with the pile up on the highway with the log truck.
Yeah, that was.
I can't drive
2 or 3.
behind. I can't drive behind
2.
a log truck or anything that's carrying a heavy load.
Oh, I don't blame
like
you.
pipes or one of those car transporters, the big rig that has the 10 cars on it they're taking
Mhm.
somewhere. I'm scared out of
No, I
my
don't
wits
blame
to
you.
drive behind those things
I don't
because of
blame
what
you.
I saw in Final
I think that was
Destination.
Final Destination 1. It may have been the original one, where they were on the freeway and then the truck and all the stuff came out. And
It's
Yeah.
bad.
it's
One
really
texter
bad.
said, "When my son learned to drive, he kept asking, 'What's the speed limit?' I said, 'Whatever the guy in front of you is doing.' He got pulled over the other day. The cop asked him how fast he was going. He said, 'My dad taught me it's whatever the guy in front of me is going.'"
They never get the first guy. They always
Yeah.
get the second guy or girl, driver, let
Yeah.
me say.
Well,
That's how it happens.
I'm always hesitant when I'm driving next to a police officer. If we're on the highway,
Mm-mm. Mhm.
and I will never drive faster. If we're driving parallel, we're in
Oh,
separate.
I hate
We're
you.
in separate
Oh, I hate
lanes.
those drivers.
We're in
Yes.
separate
I hate
lanes.
those drivers.
And let's
The
say I'm
worst.
going
Oh.
65 and the cop is going 65. I'm not going 67.
The cop is playing with you, man.
I'm not doing it.
He's
knows
not
what
going
he's
to pull
doing.
you over if you get in front of him.
I'm not doing it.
Oh, I hate drivers
not
like you.
tempting
Oh,
fate.
my God.
Willie, where do you stand on this?
I used to be like you, but now I have my system though on how
Uh-huh.
you do it. You got to do it. You have to go past the cop. Because a lot of times the cop is like,
Exactly.
I'm going to slow everybody down. I think he's just like, I'm going to cruise along, just make sure nobody goes blowing by me, just so the whole pack is slower. But you've got to have the guts.
Yeah, you got to do it
I don't
smooth.
blow by. You
Yeah.
got to smooth.
You gotta just smooth.
Exactly.
Don't make eye contact. Just got to inch along,
Well, I'll just say
inch
this.
along, and this cruise vibe, and then you get a certain amount of distance.
Yeah.
and boom.
And then once you get far enough, it's
Yeah.
like, okay.
I'll just
I'm
say
good.
this, knocking on wood. I've been driving.
You will not pass a cop.
I've been driving for 20 years.
Mhm.
I have never been pulled over for speeding.
Wow.
Well, that's good.
That's
That is great.
impressive.
So
Impressive.
I'm keeping
Very
my
Keep your method. Keep your method.
I've been pulled over twice in my life. Once was for driving with an expired tag because I forgot to put the sticker on there. And the second was for having my phone in my hand.
You're Mr. Goody
Wow,
Two
you
Shoes.
got nailed for the phone in the
I
hand.
did. Not far from here.
Oh, cool.
I
How
guess-
did it feel?
I mean, it's not great.
Yeah.
I mean,
you didn't feel
I-
like an outlaw?
I get what I deserve. I mean, the Tennessee State Police station is right over here.
Yeah, and you pulled out your phone.
So they're just waiting, I
Wow.
suppose.
So how did you feel? Did you feel like an outlaw? Did you feel like oh yes?
No, I didn't feel like an outlaw at all.
Did you think about running?
No, definitely not. I put my hands at 10 and 2.
Guys,
I rolled down the window.
Don't run away.
Had,
from the
had the
cops.
driver's
don't
license
run away from
out,
cops.
all
Yes.
ready to
PSA,
go.
do not run away from cops. I was just playing with Adam, okay?
All right, so Adam would be in the 99th percentile
Yes. Yes.
of speeding tickets.
yes.
I'm curious where I would fall because I'm definitely not in the 99th. I don't think I'm in the 10th.
I
or
think
something
I'm
like
somewhere,
that. I'm somewhere in the
middle.
middle, but I don't know if I'm the upper half or the lower half or I don't know. I've had my share
I may
over
just
I've been
be
driving for a
spot
long
middle.
time.
Randy on our text line, going back to Willie's question about deer.
The deer, yeah. What do you do?
Randy said, I hit 2 deer in a 14-month period last
Ooh.
year. I was able to swerve into the other lane because it was late at night. If I hadn't been able to, I would have had a deer fly right through my windshield. It's a split-second decision. Oftentimes, it's a lose-lose choice.
Yeah,
We had a couple of other texters say, hit the deer.
Yeah.
hit the deer.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to.
That's the thing. The lose is kind of why I asked the question, because I don't know if people have done studies or things like what is the safer way.
You just got to clip it, man. I clipped a deer this was many years ago. I clipped a deer at night going north. I think I was going back to Michigan, driving back to Michigan. And I'm in, this big rig is behind me. It's a minute behind me. But I clipped this deer and he gets back up and you can tell, okay, I'm fine. But then that big semi just boom. I was like, but because if you try to dodge the deer,
Right, you're
You got
putting
everybody else at
and
risk,
yourself,
and yourself at risk. So, I mean, a lot of times it's just you're clipping the back end of a deer or the front end, and it's usually, How many people have had a full on deer hit and it comes
was
straight
on a
to their windshield?
Predators team bus. This is before they separated church and state. The staff from the players, and all of the players and the staff were on one bus coming from the airport, and the bus slowed down, but nailed a deer, and it stopped. We had to stop and everything. It was not good.
Johnny in Hendersonville says, back to the deer. Happened to me a few years ago, and my insurance told me to always hit the deer instead of veering and hitting tree or car, etc. Deer is the comprehensive deductible, whereas the tree or car would be full deductible and go against your insurance points, etc.
Oh, wow.
It's not good news for the deer.
Yeah. Well, deer,
The deer will forget about it.
deer, did you know that law was in place?
Right.
I wish the deer could get together and say, you know what, guys, we've got to stop running out.
They probably have. There's always knuckleheads. You know it. Always
You know
knuckleheads.
there was a big turkey convention
Yeah.
in Portland.
Yes.
After Willie
After what happened.
Oh, they will
clipped the
come and
turkey.
get you.
Yeah. The turkey with the little jelly leg now.
Yeah.
He's rolling in with a wheelchair. He's
Coming
like,
in.
guys,
Guys,
I got a story
we
to
got to
tell
learn
you.
from this. I just want to tell you guys.
A word in the roost is they looking for you, Willie.
It's been a couple months.
They still
And
looking
if
for
you
you.
see this car and this guy right here,
They still looking for you, Willie.
you let me know.
I did let out a hair-raising scream at the point of contact because I was startled as hell.
Did you scream?
Yeah, he did.
Ah! What do you think you would do if you saw
I
a
would
turkey?
scream.
You say that now.
I'd be like, "Whoa!"
I said a lot of words that are
Did he say,
inappropriate.
"Ah!"
No, it wasn't high pitched, Derek.
No, I'm saying you threw your hands like, "Ah!"
I
was more
wasn't like
that, yeah.
I wasn't like
A
like
startled.
in the old cartoons when the elephant would see the mouse.
Exactly.
It was
Yes.
like that. I didn't do that.
Okay.
Oh man, good times. Good times.
Ah,
At least
man.
you weren't driving a Batmobile.
Yes, I was
And
not.
As I was doing
I'd have got 10 tickets.
yesterday and this morning, well, was it yesterday or this morning? I don't even remember. I think it was yesterday because we didn't get to it yesterday. When I'm planning for the show, I'm going to all of the sports websites you would expect. I go to ESPN, The Athletic, Pro Football Focus. I've got all of my go-to websites bookmarked. And I saw a headline on the right side of ESPN.com yesterday. And I read it and I said, wait a minute, that can't be right. Bengals Joe Burrow, home burglary altered Batmobile plans. So I missed this. Joe Burrow, I guess when he was on Hard Knocks, I think the AFC North did the in-season Hard Knocks last year. He talked about buying a Batmobile, a $3 million Batmobile. By the way, I did the research.
Mhm.
The $3 million Batmobile is not street legal. So
He just
why
wanted
buy
to have it.
But he wanted to buy it.
Collector's item for him.
But if you recall, his house was broken into. A lot of professional athletes had their homes broken into. There was some sort of like international syndicate. I don't even know what you want to call it. It was happening like Travis Kelce, maybe.
Mhm.
Maybe Patrick
Mahomes.
Mahomes. It was happening to a lot of professional athletes. So we said on the quarterback show on Netflix, I decided not to buy the Batmobile because of the burglary. But I thought to myself, especially after I read it was not street legal, I was like, why would you buy a $3 million car that you can ride up and down your driveway?
If you went 3.5 or whatever it is, could you
Mhm.
make it street legal? Like, could you adjust? Just take it down a notch?
Mm.
I don't
Probably
know
not.
the answer to that.
But I mean, it's just for him. He feels, if I got it, I can get it, and it's a collector's item.
There are only 10
Yeah. See.
being made
Hmm.
by Warner Brothers Discovery. 10 authenticated Tumbler vehicles. The collectible vehicles are not street legal.
I mean, again, I think when you and some guys are more frugal than others. So you may buy something so outlandish you look, and you say, well, why did you buy it? And then it's like, well, because I can. It's just one of those things. And I've always said, man, listen, when it comes to buying things, you got to stay in your lane. A lot of guys tend to try to go outside their lane and purchase something because the other guy has something or girl has something. And at first it's cool. I mean, because the checks are rolling in and everything else, but then you realize after a while those checks stop rolling in and you start to look back and you start to say, man, why did I buy that? Why did I buy that? This, that. And come to find out it all was worth really nothing in the big scheme of things. And but hell, he's pulling in probably 30 a year after taxes, probably a little bit more than that.
It's a drop in the bucket
it's a
for
drop in
Joe
the bucket
Burrow.
for him.
But I thought, at least if you're going to buy a $3 million vehicle, you should be able to drive it somewhere.
Yeah, you're right.
But that's just me. I don't know. But I would be curious for all of you at 615-737-1025 in honor of Joe Burrow's foiled Batmobile plans. What is the most outlandish purchase you have made or almost made, just for fun?
Okay. Well, I think we should definitely draw the line that you did it.
Yes. Okay.
Yes,
What
you
is the
did.
most
Splurge.
What
What's
is
your
the most
biggest,
outlandish
yeah.
purchase you have made?
Yeah. Because I've thought about a
615-737.
lot of things. But
Yeah.
then that power that you have, like, wait a minute, man.
Now, I'm not
That voice
expecting.
inside you is, wait a minute.
You don't need that.
Don't do that.
I'm not expecting any of you to say a $3 million Batmobile. We live within our means around here.
We
But
should.
what is the most outlandish purchase you have made? Just for fun. 615-737-1025. We'll read your reaction, but also we're going to take a trip to the Titan stock market. As we approach training camp, we're going to do a little buying and selling with the Tennessee Titans, and we'll do that next. 615-737-1025. The Borchetta Bourbon Music City Grand Prix is coming to the Nashville Superspeedway Labor Day weekend, and 1025 The Game has your chance to win VIP tickets to the IndyCar race. Text in the keyword RACE, RACE, now to 615-737-1025 to be entered to win a pair of VIP tickets. For more information on the event, visit MusicCityGP.com. Someone says, wonder what the resale price is on a Batmobile.
Probably if you keep it for a while, he'll get his money back.
Let's tell you about Loan Pronto. If you have the vision ready for a big home improvement project, let's say you want to, as the word we just used, splurge a little bit, make your home more valuable, upgrade, and you need the funds to set it up. Well, that's where Loan Pronto and their rapid equity loan program can be perfect for that project. One client got $300,000 approved from home equity in under 24 hours. And then not only did they renovate their kitchen, but they took some of that cash and paid off high interest debt, like a credit card bill where the interest payments each month are piling up on you. You can get back ahead. They cut their monthly expenses by $1,800. That's what you can do in your own formula. Instant approvals, low rates, no hard credit pull up front, and Loan Pronto does it right. They're A+ rated by the BBB. They've got nearly 2,500 five-star Google reviews. 615-499-5780 is the phone number, or go to loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Get that relief now. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781 on approved credit, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
1025 The Game is teamed up with Pella Windows and the Nashville Humane Association for a puppy pet adoption this Saturday at Pella, 277 Mallory Station Road in Cool Springs from 10 to noon. For more details, visit thegamenashville.com/events. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. Before we get to our Titans topic, in honor of Joe Burrow's foiled Batmobile plans, he was going to spend $3 million on a Batmobile that was not street legal. Or is not street legal. What is the most outlandish purchase you have ever made? Hair Metal Henry says, does marriage count as an outlandish purchase?
Well, I mean, marriage is, it is sort of a business transaction in a sense. Some of it anyway.
One texter wonders what the resale price on a Batmobile is.
Ooh, man.
Probably a little less than $3 million.
It all depends on how long you keep it.
It's actually $2.99 million.
Okay.
So
Somebody will buy it for $3.5 million. Somebody will.
I was thinking back to athletes who have made these types of purchases. And for whatever reason, maybe it's because it happened around here, my mind immediately went to Vince Young and the Cheesecake Factory.
Mm-hmm.
He reportedly had a $15,000 tab he covered for one meal at the Cheesecake Factory, which he admitted to Sports Illustrated several years ago. He said, quote, most I ever spent on a meal in my life, noting the teammates who downed expensive shots of Louis XIII cognac or left with top shelf wine bottles in hand.
Oh, so I wonder if, it was because that does happen. And I've seen some very large tabs. Typically you go out to dinner and somebody has to pick up the tab. Either they play, pull a card from the hat.
Yeah, it's a credit card game.
Either that or they designate a guy to pay for it. And
the rookies
depending on
sometimes pool
who's
together.
paying for it,
Yep.
that's how many people will show up. If that guy's paying for it and he's making, 7-8 figures, then hey, he's the guy that's paying for it and we're getting everything.
Now, in your day, when you knew that somebody was covering the tab, did you say, I'll get that extra expensive steak tonight?
No, because because I knew like it would come back on. Yeah,
right.
Karma. It would come back on me. Like, I'm not going to get something outside of what I normally get. Like, I'm not going to order, a chicken dish and, give me the best wine you got, the $7,000 bottle of wine. Give it to me. No, why am I drinking that? I never drink it and I don't want to drink it. Give me just the regular wine, okay? Or give me a regular drink. I don't need, but some players, when they find out who's paying for it, good luck.
I always wonder about, because that's one thing is the teammates and going to a nice dinner and who pays for it. But the Batmobile thing is like a luxury item, and you hear some great stories. Tim Hasselbeck told us one time about a teammate of his that he just had a big love of aquariums. So he put a huge aquarium in his house. And that was a lot. And he was like, when it first got in there, man, check this out. This is great. But
after a while,
it takes a lot, like a salt water, treating the water and
fish
getting
tank
the right
was
fish.
Huge back then. Yeah, they were huge. Everybody wanted a fish tank.
So that's that would be a splurge, I would say.
Speaking of Bengals, Mike Tyson had multiple tigers, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. Multiple.
That's quite the splurge.
Shaq bought a whole aquarium too.
Yeah, Shaq had an aquarium. The guy had to dive in there to clean it. Seriously. Had to dive in there to clean it. That's how big it was.
He had to put on scuba diving
gear?
That's
to clean
insane.
it.
That's a big aquarium.
That's
a huge
insane.
aquarium. But I get, it all depends on whether it's a car. Because some things, I wouldn't consider a house or splurge in a sense, because it's going to appreciate. If you keep the house, long enough, you more than likely sometimes, if the market's good, you'll get your money back and some. Sometimes you may have to stay in the house a little bit longer to be able to get, see some benefits from it. But I don't see a house as a splurge unless you're buying like multiple houses.
Right.
You know, then
Herm
okay.
Edwards.
Absolutely.
One house, one of everything. One of everything. One house.
One fork, one spoon, one knife, one plate, one of everything.
And he said, one girl.
One girl.
Well, do you remember Jonas Estevez when that 1 week in spring training he brought all his cars?
Oh,
Like,
Oh,
every
Jonas
day of the
Cespedes.
week.
Yeah,
Yep.
Cespedes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Now that guy would splurge on some cars.
Oh
There,
man.
there have been many a player in
Oh
many
yeah.
a sport that get a little too excited about the
Vehicle,
cars.
the
Yeah.
four wheels.
Yeah.
What about
That can be a downfall.
what about Joe Namath's fur coat?
I guess back then it
Would that have been
was.
splurging back then?
I
It
think
may
so.
have been, yeah, flashy, splurging. I guess not many people had a
I
real fur
remember.
coat.
Do you remember the basketball player Deshaun Stevenson?
Yep.
He had an ATM installed in his house.
Was that
Right.
because
I do
they did
remember
a
that.
lot of gambling, card betting, probably?
He stocked it with $20,000 in cash, ready to use at any time, which makes it an odd bet. Even crazier, if a friend feels like using it, they're hit with a $450 surcharge that goes
Yeah,
right
see?
to Stevenson.
See, he's smart. It was smart. If you have a lot of people over and I don't know if he was, but if you're gambling and you say, man, I gotta go to ATM. Oh, hey, there you go.
$450. That's quite the service charge.
Hey, it's your money
Yeah.
and they're getting charged. So you're making money.
Wes in Clarksville says, I feel bad spending $75 on dinner and Joe Burrow is buying a $3 million Batmobile. Yes. Hey, man.
That's what I said. Hey, stay in your price lane, man. That's all you got to do. It's all relative.
While we're on the topic of buying and selling,
Mhm.
with Titans training camp around the corner, I thought we'd take a trip to the Titans stock market, whatever the Titans equivalent of Wall Street is. And here's what we're going to do. We are going to buy, quote unquote, and sell, quote unquote, stock in two players on each side of the ball. So we're going to pick an offensive player we're buying stock in and an offensive player we're selling stock in. And we will do the same thing on defense. A defensive player we're buying stock in and a defensive player we're selling stock in. So I thought I'd start. We'll start on the offensive side of the ball. I am buying stock in JC Latham. He lost a considerable amount of weight this offseason. He's moving back to right tackle, which is a position he knows well. I would argue he's probably the most natural athlete on the offensive line. And there's a lot of pressure on that offensive line. But I am confident that JC Latham, moving back to right tackle, slimming down, I think he's going to have a really solid season. So I'm going to buy stock in JC Latham. Conversely, I'm going to sell stock in Tyjae Spears. And I know that the Titans are hopeful that Tyjae Spears can take some work off of Tony Pollard's plate, so to speak. But as our dear friend Teron Davenport wrote recently, Spears missed 5 games last season because of 2 concussions, an ankle sprain, and a hamstring injury. He was expected to contribute in the passing and running games, but was limited to 114 touches. So I think this is a make or break year for Tyjae Spears. And I know that he's had his moments, but the injuries concern me. I'm not as convinced that he is going to be able to help Tony Pollard lessen the load. So at this moment in time, I am buying stock on the offensive side of the ball in JC Latham and selling stock in Tyjae Spears.
I'm going to buy low on Tyjae Spears.
Okay.
I will buy your stock low.
Oh, okay. I like
And
that.
I am going because I think he's going to have opportunity. It's because they didn't.
Pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, because they didn't bring anybody else in. And there will be opportunity. Tony Pollard's a year older. So I think there's a chance that Spears has a much better year this year.
Okay.
So I'll say Spears. Like I think he's like more of the penny stocks. Not that I didn't do anything about this, but like I think Latham would be a more premium stock. Like he's a more safe bet, right?
Yes.
So I will go with Spears as my.
So who are you selling on the offensive side of the ball?
Oh,
Whose stock are you selling?
on
right
the
now?
offensive side of the
Yes.
ball.
If you're buying stock in Spears, who are you selling stock?
Let me come back to that one.
Okay.
Let me come back to that.
Derek?
I want to know who Derek's buying.
I'm buying stock in Calvin Ridley.
Okay.
I think they are going to make it a point, because when you have a young quarterback and you have a a seasoned veteran, receiver, you try to make that connection as quickly as possible because more than likely that is going to be the number one guy the young quarterback is looking at majority of the time. Especially as the season gets going. Now, as it, once you get into the latter part of the season, hopefully the transition from the 1 to the 2 to the 3, the progression, he starts to read a lot better. But I think at the beginning, it's going to be a lot of Calvin Ridley. Now it's up to Calvin to make the catches, but it's going to be a lot of Calvin Ridley. So I'm buying stock in Calvin Ridley. I think he's underappreciated. I think the stock was low last year. I think he has an opportunity to, whoever buys it, I think they have an opportunity to double their profit going to get Calvin Ridley. I think he feels more comfortable in this offense this year. You're going to see more of the Calvin Ridley that we saw in Atlanta. When I thought that when Atlanta cut him, the first thing I said, Titans, you need to go get him. You do. And everybody, don't touch him. This kid is a flat out baller. He's getting his legs back underneath him. He's feeling comfortable in the offense. And I think he's going to take off this year. The guy I'm buying, not necessarily because I think he's a bad player, but because of his situation, Lloyd Cushenberry.
You're selling on
I'm
Cushenberry.
selling on Cushenberry. Because I just, with that Achilles, when he does become a starter, just like any other injury, we've seen it across the board with tackles and guards that have played for this team. That year they come back, or even edge rushers, that year they come back off that injury, they're not the same player. It takes them time. So this year to me, it's going to be sort of like a reintroduction to the offensive line for Lloyd Cushenberry. So the stock started to plummet. I get it because he was hurt. But I'm selling it because I just believe it's going to go lower than what it is now, and not because I think he's a bad player. It's a damaged product right now.
Willie, quickly.
That's a good
Are
one.
you selling stock?
I will sell stock because I think I could get a good deal. I don't play the stock market, but I feel like I could get a pretty good price for selling Tony Pollard because his numbers look good. He's got 3 straight 1,000-yard rushing seasons, which always looks sexy on the surface. So I think I can find a buyer. So I'm going to sell fairly high on him because I think he's just reaching that age where running backs start to tail off a little bit.
615-737-1025. Buying and selling stock. We'll start on offense. You are buying stock in one Titans offensive player and selling stock in one Titans offensive player. Who are you choosing? 615-737-1025. We'll do the same exercise on the other side of the ball coming up next, but I want to hear your thoughts on which players on offense you are buying and selling stock in as training camp approaches. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. This week's Nashville's best deal is Mellow Mushroom. There's no pizza like Mellow Mushroom Pizza. Stone baked with fresh ingredients, next level imagination, and limitless options for customization. It's a higher order of pizza. You know and love Mellow Mushroom. Now get half off a $30 gift card now while supplies last at theGameNashville.com/deals. The gift card is good for the downtown Broadway and Franklin locations. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingen playing the Titans stock market a little bit. Before the break, we were buying and selling stock in one Titans player on offense. I bought stock in, I don't even remember at this point. Who did that? J.C. Latham. Thank you. I sold stock in Tajay.
Very convicted.
Yes.
Yes.
I bought stock in J.C.
Memorable
Latham.
stock right there. Man, I just bought some great stock. What was it again?
Somewhere my financial advisor is, "Ugh." I bought stock in J.C. Latham. I sold stock in Tajay Spears. Willie bought stock in Tajay Spears and sold stock on Tony Pollard. And Derek bought stock in Calvin Ridley and sold stock in Lloyd Cushenberry. I remember you. As a shock, I think this is going to be a popular selection. I'm going to buy stock in the big man, Tavondre Sweat.
The meatloaf.
Yes.
Or as Derek coined Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons, Big Jeff and Enormous Sweat.
that's the group.
The R&B group touring all of the local casinos, opening for Drew Hill. Anyway,
Is Drew Hill even torn?
yes, actually, because I saw Drew
Oh, my
Hill
goodness.
advertised on the billboard in
Oh,
town.
wow. Okay. So he is touring. Good for you. Oh,
Tavondre
man.
Sweat
Yes.
is Keith Sweat's younger, heftier brother who
Mhm.
gets dragged on tour. Nevertheless, Tavondre Sweat, I saw this stat from Next Gen Stats on NFL.com. This was entering week 17, so near the end of the season. So it's not the final total, but impressive nonetheless. With Tavondre Sweat on the field this season, this is entering week 17, the Titans have allowed 4.2 yards per carry, which would be 7th fewest among all defenses. Without Sweat, they have allowed 4.9 yards per carry, which would be the 3rd highest mark in the league. So Sweat made a huge difference, no pun intended, on the run defense. I think the run defense is the one area where Titans fans can really be confident in this team. I think that was the one aspect of the game that they were above average in last season, was stopping the run. So I like what I saw from Meatloaf / Enormous Sweat. So I will buy stock in Tavondre Sweat. Now, I can't sell the entire secondary.
Mhm.
That was what I was thinking. Can I sell the entire secondary? Again, not an unpopular choice, I bet. I'm selling L'Jarius Sneed. Who knows how available he will be, if he is on the field, how healthy he will be. I'll believe it when I see it. So I'm selling stock in L'Jarius Sneed. No shocker there, I don't think.
I think you're selling low.
Yeah.
His stock is down.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're selling
I'm
low.
dumping it.
You're
I'm
dumping it
dumping the
now.
stock.
You're just cutting your losses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
But I'm here for you, Adam, once again.
because you're going to buy
picking it
low
up?
on L'Jarius Sneed.
I'm not buying
Pick
low
up
on
the
I'm not
pieces.
buying low on L'Jarius Sneed. I'm staying away from that one. But I am going to buy low on Jarvis Brownlee.
Okay.
I think again, this is a
Mhm.
buy low, and I'm trying to say, can I end up winning this investment? Get good return on my
Mhm.
investment. I'm not saying we're going to see Brownlee Island at Nissan Stadium, right? Like Darrelle Revis, the old
Yes.
Revis Island. They put him on the island. You can't get it. But I think he can be a solid corner. I think the growing pains, he was kind of thrown in there,
Mhm.
and I think I saw enough to where he can be a steady corner for a while. So I think he's going to take another step forward. I'm buying low on Jarvis Brownlee.
Okay. There comes
So if you sell him, Adam, I'm here. I'm buying low from you.
Okay.
picking up the pieces.
You just sell them right to me.
I don't
Yeah,
play
there
the
you go.
stock market either.
Yeah.
So
There comes a time where you see something and you figure like it's either reached this point, you're gonna let it go, or it's reached this point, you choose to keep it. I think this guy has reached this point. I think his stock is what it is, and it's best to sell it now because it has the potential to decline. Roger McCreary.
Okay.
I'm selling it. I just think we've seen the best. He's a good player. He's just a solid player. There's nothing there's nothing great about it. There's nothing necessarily bad about it, but he's one of those guys that has the potential to get upseated by someone else at that nickel position. This is a contract year for him. And typically I'm going against conventional wisdom because it's, conventional wisdom tells me that contract year, a guy should play better because he knows that, he's auditioning for 31 other teams to get that a bigger paycheck. So, but in this case, I just think we've seen the best of Roger McCreary. And I'm selling where I can because I think the stock is going to take a dip. And once it takes that dip, I don't think it's coming back up. So I'm selling Roger McCreary, and I'm buying, like you, Willie, I'm buying Jarvis Brownlee stock low because I have the opportunity to buy it at its lowest point right now and become a millionaire by the end of the season because I think his stock is going to explode. You remember that what's the name of that show that used to come on where the guy be making all the funny noises, the financial show? It was not a CNN show.
Mad Money?
Yeah,
with Jim
Mad Money.
Cramer?
Yes. He make all it. Buy. That's Brownlee for me.
Okay.
He's that guy that you need to buy his stock. Buy now.
I'm going to sell on Amani Hooker because I just think he is, again, getting to the stage of his career where he already has piled up a
And
number
you know
of
who he
injuries.
is.
You know who he is. But if you've already had this many injuries at this stage of your career, you're probably more apt to have more. And so I'm circling him as a guy that I would sell. I hope I'm wrong, but that's a guy I'm selling.
One texter says Snead should not even be stock. It should be like Bitcoin because it's worthless.
Oh man, that's a whole nother category right there.
Yeah, I know.
What about the fungible token, or what do you call those things that people try to get you?
Oh man,
Dogecoin?
Non-fungible, like what? Yeah,
I guess that's what it is.
NFTs. That was a whole thing.
that's
Remember
right.
NFTs?
I remember
the
that.
non-fungible token for memorabilia and stuff like.
Such a funny word, fungible.
Yeah.
Oh man, people bought into it too.
One texter says, buy stock in Xavier Restrepo. Sell stock in Traylon Burks. Use my capital loss from Burks on next year's taxes.
Burks hasn't become.
Is there something lower than a distressed asset? Because that's what Traylon Burks is at this point.
He hasn't even went public. Traylon Burks. He hasn't went public. He hadn't even generated enough money to go public. So he's not even in the discussion.
I am interested in the Restrepo stuff.
He hasn't even went public.
I know, but remember when he signed with the Titans as an undrafted free agent, a lot of Titans fans were freaking out. Like, it's going to be awesome. Remember, I told y'all, don't fall victim for those slickly produced videos during rookie minicamp.
Right. They'll be back in a couple weeks
with Cam Ward throwing the perfect spiral in slow motion to Xavier Restrepo. Like that one guy who quote tweeted it and said 1,000-yard season incoming for Restrepo. Don't do it. But now that we're getting closer to training camp, I think the Restrepo hype, Restrepo Palooza, maybe is what I'll call it. I think that's going to build back up.
It may. I can't see why it will not.
Restrepo-roo, like Bonnaroo, Restrepo-roo, Restrepo Palooza.
Yeah,
well,
Restrepo
they had to
Palooza. There
shorten
you go.
Bonnaroo. It got rained out, so
Yes.
they're looking to market something. So why not?
Restrepo. There you go.
Restrepo Palooza.
There we go.
There
We
it
got
is.
it.
But I am curious how that happens.
It's going to ramp back up, I'm sure, because again, they're going to play a couple plays. He's going to make some plays in camp, and they're going to slow mo him, and everything looks much better slow motion. Everybody wants their life to be viewed in slow motion because it looks so cool. But that's what's going to happen, and then he's going to have an opportunity to show whether he can play in this league this year, or is he a guy that needs some more development.
615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Buy or sell with your favorite or least favorite, I suppose, Titans player on each side of the ball. You can buy one offensive player, sell one offensive player, buy one defensive player, sell one defensive player. If you've learned anything from me in this segment, it's don't ever take financial advice from me because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow will join us. We'll talk Titans. We'll talk NFL. We'll talk about, I don't know. We'll figure it out in the next few minutes. Jonathan Hutton's usually game for anything. We'll talk with Hutton coming up next. 615-737-1025. This fall, live at the Pinnacle at Nashville Yards, Tim McGraw will perform at Trintix's Rock the Cradle. This event is sure to be a great time, celebrating a great cause. Proceeds from the event will support newborns and moms at Ascension St. Thomas Midtown. Get your tickets now at rockthecradlenashville.org. D. Mace Fingan and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, joined as we are every Wednesday at noon by Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow on Outkick. Hutton, after we get off with you, we are going to have a discussion. Do you know what was 15 years ago yesterday?
Oh, no, I don't.
The decision. LeBron James's decision was 15 years ago yesterday, which is just crazy to say aloud. I went back and watched it this morning, and I'll share my thoughts on it in a little bit. But
that's when he became the villain.
Yes, that was his villain origin story. Wearing that oversized gingham plaid shirt and those baggy jeans.
And 15 years later, Jim Gray is on the Brady podcast.
There we go.
But
how about that?
The question I have for you, and this is the question that we're going to toss around later this hour, is how do you think the decision altered the landscape of professional sports?
Well, okay. It altered the landscape of the NBA for the super team. That alone changed the perception for me of the league, because you started to have all these different teams. You were starting to see it anyway, but LeBron, that solidified the argument. That maybe it didn't solidify anything. It added more gasoline to the argument of if you're Jordan or LeBron. Michael Jordan would have never done this with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. He would never, that whole thing. It was ring chasing. It was a league that became tent pole organizations instead of spreading out the championships like we've seen recently, by the way, in the league. And I think for sports itself, it became more, it was already drama, but it really became more about the drama off the court and how long can we make this an episodic series than it did, let's do it all on behalf of my teammates kind of thing. That was behind the scenes. It's like NIL. It was going on, but we saw how the sausage was made, and LeBron milked it for all it was worth. And it turns out we were glued to the TV that day, but whenever we turned it off, we weren't that impressed.
It is crazy to remember the fact that we were glued to the TV for the decision. People were piling into bars. I remember watching a lot of local Cleveland news following the decision. Talking to fans who were crying in the bar after LeBron James bolted on Cleveland, and people were burning jerseys and that whole thing. So
it was the ultimate branding moment. The brand was already there, but we were watching because of the brand of King James. It went from King James to LeBron. King James was the anointed one from high school. I was watching him in high school basketball, and then it went from that to put it all together and just go win and dominate, and it became the villain. Jordan became the villain for me whenever Penny Hardaway and Shaquille O'Neal got together. And in Nashville, in McMinnville, we were watching a little bit of the Orlando Magic more than just the Chicago Bulls. And in this case, it went from LeBron's in Cleveland to LeBron's in Miami. But really, let's see what happens with the Spurs.
I remember when LeBron James was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and he had to wear patches over his tattoos when he played. Do you remember that? That's how far back you have to go.
You're right.
They look like Band-Aids all over his arms because he had to cover his tattoos. Switching gears to the Titans, yesterday, Jeremy Fowler put out his list with the help of league executives and scouts and coaches and such of the top defensive tackles in the NFL. And Jeffrey Simmons maintained his number 4 spot from a year ago. And what I found fascinating about it, Hutton, was the reaction locally, because we had a lot of people text in saying Jeffrey Simmons should be nowhere near the top 10 on this list. But football people still believe him to be a top 5 defensive tackle in the NFL. Where do you think that disconnect is between league people and Titans fans on the value and ranking league wide of Jeffrey Simmons?
Well, we've seen Jeffrey Simmons up close as a community, as a fan base, as a media, be at a very high, play at a very high level, right? It was contract year. And we've seen how things have gone since then. We have not seen we have been told that the leader is there. I don't know if we've seen the full leader ascend to grab the brass ring, so to speak. But on the field, he's as consistent as what the Titans have. It also shows you that if the trade value were there, if the talk was in the draft, how many players are truly hold value for trade assets? He was at the top of the list and he remains there. Do you have handy the top 10? Can you give me like 5, 6, 7, those players? Those
If you give me just a moment, I can do that.
Because I'm not arguing that he's top 10. He's absolutely top 10 player. I want to know who he ranked behind Jeffrey Simmons. Because look, here's the deal. Right now, it's Jeffrey Simmons, and I think the fan base viewed him as Big Jeff, the player that's dominant. And we're not seeing the pass rush there. The defensive line has not been good. He has the comments about no one runs on the Titans, and then they give up 200 plus yards. I mean, it was bad. So yeah, it's recency bias there on the reaction, but it's fair because it's been the production versus the production, and he set the bar, and it's a compliment to him, by the way, to expect that the bar be reset if you're that dominant of a player and you're paid the way he was.
So here are the defensive tackles who came in after Jeffrey Simmons on this list. Quinnen Williams of the Jets at 5. Leonard Williams.
Coming off a great year.
Leonard Williams of the Seahawks at 6. Nnamdi Madubuike of the Ravens at 7. DeForest Buckner of the Colts at 8. Vita Vea of the Buccaneers at 9. And Cameron Hayward of the Steelers at 10.
See, I'm putting him ahead of pretty much everybody, but you've got the guy. Let's see, you got Quinnen Williams, and then you have the other Seattle player, that
Leonard Williams.
Leonard Williams, thank you. They're coming off of really solid seasons, so if you're buying into Jeffrey Simmons, you're saying that he's going to get closer to where he was, not what he has just been.
Now, speaking of buying, we were having a discussion and doing an exercise with individuals that we would buy and sell on offense and on defense. But for the sake of the argument, which guy as a whole you would buy, and which guy as a whole would you sell? Okay.
Am I doing this for a year? Like right now?
Like right now, predicting moving forward this upcoming season.
Okay. So if this is a stock market, I have to, am I doing offense and defense?
Yes.
Yes.
I have to buy Cam Ward. This is the lowest stock price I'm going to get on him. Think about his coverage in the draft. You're talking about a number 1 overall pick at quarterback and the buzz around it. I'm getting the lowest price I'll ever see on a quarterback for an NFL franchise. So I'm taking Cam Ward, and I think the price is a little high for Calvin Ridley. I do. I think that the price tag would be as high as it's going to be for Calvin Ridley with the Titans right now, because he's the only guy they have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But that could also mean that his price can continue to rise. Yeah.
Yes, but I think a lot of people would choose Calvin Ridley. I'll take the quarterback over the receiver for this exercise, and I'll take the collection of the group more than I will just one player, because I don't know if the season is going to go all that great as a whole for Cam Ward, but I do think we see a player that improves, and I like what I've seen and what I've heard from Ward so far this offseason. So again, I'll buy into quarterback just because I think that the value is not going to be much lower than what it is. And I'll sell on Ridley just because it's got to be more than just one player dialed in for the production. The other player I would consider is J.C. Latham, moving back to right tackle.
Selling or buying?
Buying.
Okay.
At right tackle. But they've sold on him at left tackle. Now, on defense, L'Jarius Sneed would be the one I'm selling because I don't even know if the guy's going to play. But I mean, if we're going stock price, can the price be lower on Jeffrey Simmons right now locally than what it is? I don't think it can.
But I think if you're talking about nationally, his stock is still high.
It's
Based
still
upon what
high.
the execs have said about him, they rank him 4th. So
Yeah.
that's a high stock that, is he going to get any higher?
Well, I think if he's not going to be pissed off for greatness this season, I don't know when he would be. Is the Grizzly going to show up? Is the Grizzly Bear going to show up? You also, you had T'Vondre Sweat playing right next to him, but throughout T'Vondre Sweat's career, he's had a ton of quarterback pressures, not many sacks. Now, it's not all about the sacks. You can get off the field on 3rd down through a quarterback pressure. So, that's good. But in terms of just soaring and making some money on my investment, I'm either going to go with one of the young corners, or I'm taking Jeffrey Simmons in the middle of the defensive line. Because I don't know anything else about the stock price on the other players other than just let's throw some coins out there and see what happens. I don't understand. So if I don't invest in Bitcoin because I can't explain it to you in one sentence.
Yeah, me either.
I can't explain the other players on defense to you in one sentence. Like on why you should buy or sell, because we have not seen it yet as a collective group. There's a lot of youth there. So given that and the unknown factors of what we're going to see from a pass rush, I think my only investment could be Jeffrey Simmons, and hoping that he plays more like the All-Pro Jeffrey Simmons than the guy who is we're talking about more than just is he going to be a leader or not. I just want him to go out there and ball out, and I think that's what Jeffrey Simmons can do. Just go play. I want him to just go play. And when that guy shows up, it's a good thing for the Titans defense.
Now let me switch sports quickly, and I'm pass it over to Willie. Basketball, the NBA. There hasn't been, there was a little buzz about Memphis, and it comes out there are players that have said they would not want to play in Memphis. Listen, I don't live in Memphis. Every city has their problems, but do you look at this as the NBA may take a look at Memphis as a organization there and potentially wanting to move it? Now if they move it's going to take a lot, but I'm just saying, if you have players, and every player may not think this way, the guys in Memphis don't think that way, they're there, but if you have more players coming out saying, man, I don't want to, that's not a place that I want to go, should the NBA do something about that? Okay,
let me be.
And I'm just asking a question. I'm not advocating for the Grizzlies to leave Memphis, but eventually it's going to come up again.
There's a bigger picture discussion to have with this, and I'll bring that up last because I think that's a more serious one. But honestly, I think a lot of this, from the players' perspective, the Grizzlies don't stay over or they don't fly out early in certain of those popular cities in the NBA. Players want to do that. They remember how they don't do that anymore because of Ja.
Yeah,
they don't go to LA early or stay after. There's certain cities where they just avoid what could happen. Just for making sure that everybody's good. If you're going to some of the other markets that no one wants to stay over in, Memphis is staying over there. They're on those. Nobody wants to stay over in Salt Lake, but they'll fly out of LA early and get to Salt Lake for an extra night because of that was the NBA stepping in with Ja Morant from a year and a half, 2 years ago. The more serious one would be, instead of the NBA wanting to move out, the NBA should invest and try to actually change the culture that everyone's talking about. Be a league that wants to invest in a city and make it better. Are the Pistons moving out of Detroit? No,
they moved back to Detroit because they were out in Auburn Hills. Yeah.
So invest in Memphis and actually be a part of the change instead of the reason why you're looking for a way to tap out. And by the way, I went to a Grizzlies game this past year to see the Knicks. It's not like they don't have a following. I mean, the arena is fun, but outside of the arena, you want to go back to your hotel. You do. And that's literally right outside of the arena. So be a league that wants to help be a part of the reason why you start to see things turn the other way. Then, oh, we're getting out of here because it's bad and it's going to be worse. This is their opportunity. I would hope that they would look on that side of the thing than the other. I would look for a Penny Hardaway type guy.
Mm-hmm.
Penny Hardaway loves the city of Memphis, loves it. And he's trying to be a part of the reason why, you look on some of the reasons why it can be better, not worse. Mm-hmm. And I would look for those type of players. Unfortunately, you just can't do that with Ja Morant. And that's unfortunate because he was right there, Mace, to ascend to the next level.
He was ready to be the face of the NBA.
Powerade had just signed him to a deal, the first player that they had signed as an endorser in like 15 years. It was Ja Morant, like $100 million plus deal. Just done that whenever all that stuff went off. So, unfortunately, it's not going to get back to that. Ja Morant's going to play the villain. He's saying that everyone's out to get him. Well, that's not the face of what I'm talking about here. It's got to be something else. And instead of the player, it can be the league, and embracing and investing in the city itself behind the scenes. You don't have to do everything publicly, but just make sure that you embrace what you're trying to leave. If that's the rumor.
Jonathan Hutton is with us, and
that would be mine. Like, instead of kicking people out or wanting to leave, I would try to make sure people want to come and stay.
Another sort of big picture question here for you. You got me. We were talking about markets and attractiveness.
Yeah.
One thing that gets talked about a lot in the NHL, and it's become a common thing to the point where it's not being adjusted in this new CBA they're about to ratify, but it got some heavy discussion, and that is the state income tax of every city. Yep. and the perceived advantage. And I'm curious if you ever thought, why do we never hear it? I mean, never, for other sports. Like, wouldn't you think if it's a thing in hockey, and it is, we just had, for example, Nick Perbix, who was on with us. He's not a high-end free agent, but he came from Tampa. He signed with Nashville, and he admitted that he did consider that. And in a perfect world, you want to keep more of your money. It's a fact. Like, it's not disputed. But you never hear it in the NBA, MLB, or the NFL.
I don't hear about it in the NBA. That kind of ruins my point I was going to make. I was going to say, like, is it the length of the season? Because in the NFL, you're taxed in every state that you play in. Just no different than any player. Is it because of how many home games you get in Tennessee?
Well, I think it's just your residency, right? I guess maybe.
Well, it is like the players, just talking with like Logan Ryan and Delaney before, and Mace, you tell me this. Mm-hmm. Were you taxed on every state that you played in?
Yeah, because what happened was in Cincinnati was one of the last teams. They introduced what they called, I think it was the entertainers tax or something. And it was, because entertainers were coming in and they were not getting taxed on the money. It had a lot of people, especially sports teams, coming in. So they added in was essentially a performance tax or entertainers tax. So all states do it now. Whether you are a state, because I'm sure Tennessee, when people come in here to play,
hockey,
they tax you for playing here. So just because you don't have a state tax doesn't mean that state is not going to tax you when you come to play.
But isn't that separate from what we're
that's
talking
separate.
about?
Look, it tells you I'm in communications, not math here. I'm not a mathematician, but they said like they were taxed. They had to file based on different states that they play in. So anytime that they got like Florida or saying like they were cool with that. They like playing Willie. I mean, to your point, if that's you're playing Jacksonville, I mean, you're playing a few other states that would benefit you as a player. You do hear about it all the time in the NHL.
Well,
you're right.
They're
I don't know what it
negotiating,
is.
like teams negotiate.
I don't know.
They say, hey, look, the Florida Panthers have really done a great job of keeping guys where they can do the math, and the Predators have used it to their advantage. They say, well, $8 million in Tennessee is equivalent of $10 million in California, or pick a state. And certainly the Canadian markets, I think that's probably part of the answer, is the Canadian markets, you get taxed
Okay.
very heavily
Okay.
by living in Canada. And a lot of them are Canadian cities. So it has to do with your residence, I think. But I'm just curious why it's become such a big thing in hockey, but it never even gets a sniff of discussion for the other sports.
Mace, when you
Like,
played,
did it ever come up with you, Mace, at all? Did your agent ever say, hey, if you're living in Tennessee, you're now moving to Baltimore or whatever, and now Maryland has this with state taxes. Did that ever become a part of anything?
Well, you knew, because it's not like, and I think we all got to understand, guys, a lot of guys can't pick where, like, they don't have like 10 places they could pick,
Right.
and 5 of them are
Right, you gotta
taxable
go
and
with what you got.
untaxed.
Yeah.
So, and if you are that guy, typically your team is trying to keep you, and they're going to overpay for you. So,
That's a
but
good point.
when I was a free agent, whether it was New England or Baltimore, I was going to get taxed. I was going to get a state tax. I wasn't looking to go somewhere else at the time, and no one was looking to have me as a receiver that didn't have a no state income tax. So I had to go with, in the sense of that, I had to go because there was no other option. So yeah, you talk about it and you realize the financial hit, when you have to pay taxes or at the end of the year or whatnot. So yeah, players talk about it, but I think they talk about it more now than they did then.
Is it
Hey, Mace, when you were paid, were you paid once every 17 weeks with the Titans, or did they spread it out? I felt like
no, the Titans
teams
spread theirs out. The Titans was the 1st and the 15th. So guys got paid way like a couple of months after the season was done, which it worked out for a lot of guys too.
like
which,
through March.
Exactly. So it helps you budget. So that helped. But then the Baltimore Ravens, they paid you every week. So, teams are, no, Baltimore went to every 2 weeks too, I believe. But some teams paid you every week. So that's how it went.
Is it as simple as hockey players in relation to baseball players and basketball players and football players don't make as much money? Therefore, the amount of taxes they have to pay doesn't really matter to them as much as it does for hockey players? Is it as simple as that?
Well, I would say that there's a high percentage of football players, that lower third of the league, that is they're not making that much, right? The league minimum, there's every team's got a number of players that are on the low end.
Exactly.
Right?
Majority of your
top
team
players make more.
Majority of your team is on the lower end. That's what you want.
Now the NBA, that
still
might
a
be
good team.
a stratosphere and even baseball. I think those salaries are quite a bit higher. Maybe it's not as big a deal for that. That's a fair point on those two for sure. But the NFL, I would think, I've never heard the Titans try to use that angle, like when they're trying to recruit a free agent. Maybe they do behind the scenes, and we just don't hear about it.
Yeah, there is the jock tax. You're right, Mace. I'm looking at it right now. AFC South is the most tax-friendly NFL division. Looking at this on Google.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
3 of the 4 teams play in states with no tax on regular income.
But
Which
then
means
you got to
no-
pay taxes.
That means
when
no
you
jock
perform
taxes on away games. So there you go.
It's certainly not
but
equating to winning.
But
for
those,
for
but
teams.
those who come in, they have to pay the tax,
I'm
right?
sure
Yes.
there's been.
Yes.
I'm sure there has been a study, and maybe I can search for it in my free time, with if there's a correlation between the teams that don't pay as much taxes or no state taxes and winning. Like, as you just said, the AFC South, the friendliest division in football when it comes to tax situations, clearly not translating to as many wins. And
Sure, but in hockey, it's a thing. You would admit, right?
oh, absolutely.
You had your whole Sun Belt thing.
Yes, that's why hockey is officially a Sun Belt sport now. But Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with
Fascinating.
Hutton. Yes, Jonathan.
That's a
Hutton,
good question, Willie.
Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton Withrow joining us as he does every Wednesday on the program. Hutton, great stuff as always. We'll chat next week.
Yeah, have a great rest of the week, guys.
You as well. Jonathan Hutton on the program, 615-737-1025. Maybe we'll pick up on this conversation because I did just find something that sort of breaks down the taxes specifically to NHL players. And maybe we can all take a tax class together. 615-737-1025. Today, come out to Brewhouse South in Cool Springs and meet Nashville native and two-time IndyCar champion Joseph Newgarden from 5:30 to 7. Also, Big Joe Dubin will be on site for a special broadcast of Chasing Checkers from 6 to 7. So get out to Brewhouse South today and meet Joseph Newgarden and get signed up to win tickets to the Borchetta Bourbon Music City Grand Prix.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. It is hump day. Hump day. People still say that. I guess so. I still say it. So there you go. But this is Derek Mason. You heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds, only to face disappointment. But I got some solutions here, some answers for you, because I know you're looking for them. But because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle. And that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. Listen, I've experienced it. They've customized one for me, so I know they will do it for you. And I have dropped some weight, and I'm sure and I promise if you stick to it, you'll drop some weight too. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D-Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune into ESPN 94.9 The Fan today as the Nashville Sounds take on Durham. Pre-game begins at 5:20 and the first pitch is at 5:35. Coverage is also available on the Game Nashville app and at thegamenashville.com. Sounds baseball on ESPN 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. So I wanted to continue the conversation about state taxes, because if you're a Predators fan, if you're a hockey fan, you hear this all the time, especially with how successful Sun Belt teams have been in recent years, with the Florida Panthers winning multiple championships, the Tampa Bay Lightning winning multiple championships, the Vegas Golden Knights winning a championship. Go back to the Predators making the Stanley Cup final in 2017. What did I say? Since 2017, there's only been one Stanley Cup final where both teams were outside the Sun Belt, and that was in 2019 when the Blues faced the Bruins in the Stanley Cup final. So, as you said, Willie, it is interesting that we don't hear about it really in any other sport. And my general idea is basketball and baseball players specifically make so much money that paying exorbitant taxes doesn't really affect them one way or another. But it is interesting. I stumbled across this article from taxfoundation.org. So they know what they're talking about. Taxfoundation.org. State income taxes and the 2024 NFL draft class. And within this article, they use the example of Joe Burrow, who is not in the 2024 NFL draft class, but they write, quote, Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow, who leads the league with $55 million in expected compensation in 2024, will pay an estimated $3.59 million in state income taxes wearing orange and black. But if he swapped places with Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, his state income tax burden would plummet to $379,000. On the other hand, if he packed his bags for any of the California teams, Burrow's tax hit would skyrocket to $7.29 million.
So California around 7 million. Let's just keep it round. About 4 million in Ohio, and it would be less than 1 million in Florida.
Less than
Yes,
500,000
in Florida.
Less than 500,000.
Yeah.
And I don't
Yes.
even know where that comes from, because I don't think they have a state.
They don't have a
Income tax.
state income tax.
So
no.
I don't know how they calculate
Other
that.
taxes.
But you get where this is going, and this has become a thing where negotiations have now factored this in for free agents in hockey. It's become common, and to the point where a lot of teams who happen to be negotiating for organizations who are on the short end of this, right? A Canadian team has got to factor this in. Hey, man, we might have to offer more to get this guy, because he knows if he goes to a Sun Belt team, he's going to keep more of his money. But they don't do that in the other sports. I don't get it. Like even Major League Baseball, there is a middle class group of free agents out there that don't make what a high end starting pitcher makes. 15 million or 20 million a year. There's those guys that are good enough to be in the league, but are probably going to make that 6 to 8 million. Where saving an extra $1 million in taxes for the length of a contract, a 4-year deal or something like that, that's significant money. But it never gets talked about.
So on Puckpedia, which is a great resource for hockey fans, I do have an entire section understanding how NHL players are taxed. So you can apply this to other sports
Right.
as
And
well.
we're trying not to go too deep in the weeds in this. So it's a general thing. But they're like, as you're saying, now there are websites that do these calculations. And you better believe the agent should be doing these calculations.
But that's why. And listen, it didn't work. But you got to applaud, him for trying. And other players have tried to do similar to this. Odell Beckham took a portion of his salary in Bitcoin. I don't know how it's going now, but he took a portion of his salary in Bitcoin. You look at what Caleb Williams tried to do last year. He tried to, classify himself as an LLC because he said he's his own employer, which he truly is. But when you're employed by someone else, you lose that status because you become an employee of that business. You are your own business, but inside of the football world, you are a employee of the football team. So he tried, which if he would have won, that would have changed the dynamics of contracts everywhere.
Yeah.
And they know it. So he wasn't able to do that. But I don't blame him for, going to, I don't blame him for trying to see if that was something attainable for him to do as far as trying to work out his contract.
I also think that there are a number of athletes, and Nashville is a great example,
Mhm.
but there are a lot of, say, baseball players that will have a residence in Florida because their team plays the spring training there anyway, and they can maybe get around the state income tax, right? If they have residency in one of those states. I have heard that, and I think you see a lot of athletes now moving to Tennessee who have never played for the Titans or the Predators,
Mhm.
but they live here. There's a lot of baseball players that do it. I think maybe that's part of the reason, and maybe that's the strategy, but I would still think that contract negotiations, especially for families that, are players that have families that they want to put in school and things like that, is it just more common in hockey? I don't know.
So this taxfoundation.org write-up, quote, here's how much NFL players can expect to pay in state and local income taxes to all relevant states at multiple salary levels by team. As a simplifying assumption, the author assumed 3 duty days for every away game, with a denominator of 18 weeks representing the regular season, which is the time span across which NFL salaries are typically allocated for such purposes. So a Tennessee Titans player making $1 million pays $8,305 in tax
Here,
Well, overall,
overall.
that assumes, as it says, it assumes 3 duty days for every away game. And a duty day is the days where these players are practicing or playing somewhere else. So in the example of hockey, a player for the New York Rangers will pay New York state taxes on home games, but will also owe taxes in California for road games played against the Kings,
Right.
Ducks, and Sharks.
I get a stack of them every year. Even the announcers get those. It's not a huge amount of
So-
money.
So according to this table, a Titans player making $1 million will be taxed $8,305
That's
on
because
$1 million.
okay, if I'm understanding this right, which I believe I am, New York is a state that if you are a resident, if you're a player there, whether you're playing there or not that day, you're going to get taxed that day by them, and you're going to get taxed by the other state that you're playing in. Is that what they're saying in regards to New York?
I believe so.
That is crazy, because in Nashville, well, Tennessee, it's if you're not playing here, you're not getting taxed for that week, I believe. So I may be going to Cincinnati. I'm getting taxed in Cincinnati because I'm working in Cincinnati on that day. So they're going to tax me that day based upon, I guess they do it, based upon how much you make and what you would have made that game and so forth and so
Right,
on.
and
So
I'm sure there's probably some people listening going, listen, I'd love to make that. These are good
Yes.
problems, because if you're making that much money and you can do that, you're living the dream.
exactly.
They may not be concerned about that, but I'm curious from a competitive and a
Mhm.
negotiation standpoint why the Titans, among other teams, Jaguars, haven't been able to take advantage of this.
Because
that they have.
you gotta be see, here's the problem. It's easy to do it when you're winning. It's easy to do it when you're winning, to get guys to come, because they're not really the
Right.
saving money is a cherry on top. I'm
Okay.
going to a winning team and I'm going to save money. But when you're not a consistent, like if Pittsburgh, if this was the Nashville Steelers and they had the history that the Pittsburgh Steelers have,
Mhm.
guys are going to want to come here. Why? One, because it is. We don't have to pay state income tax, but I'm going to a winning organization too. So that helps. When you're a winning organization, it helps that you do have a no state income tax.
615-737-1025. We see your phones. We'll get to them next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063, The Game.
I report to tomorrow.
What's it on?
Why government matters.
Really? It's never too early to learn that the government is a greedy piglet that suckles on a taxpayer's teat until they have sore, chapped nipples. I'm gonna need a different metaphor to give this 9-year-old. What's your name, ma'am?
Lauren Burkus.
Lauren. My name is Ron Swanson, and I'm gonna tell you everything you need to know about the miserable, screwed up world of local government.
You have mustard in your mustache.
Don't sass me, Burkus. Let's get started. Life, liberty, and property. It's John Locke. This is your lunch. Now, you should be able to do whatever you want to with this, right? If you want to eat all of it, great. If you want to throw it away in the garbage, that's your prerogative. But here I come, the government. And I get to take 40% of your lunch. And that, Lauren, is how taxes work.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
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 Thank you, Ron Swanson.
Just ate 40% of your meal.
Let's go to Jerry on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Jerry, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Well, it's Gary for one. For
Gary,
two,
sorry.
That's okay. I want to play devil's advocate because you guys sound like your H&H or HR block on the radio just became a. Yeah, there's the state tax here. Yeah, Canada pays more, but you know what? They get free health care. If you get a $10 million bypass, you don't pay nothing. Yeah, Detroit, you could get twice the house you could in Nashville. Yeah, there's a big sales tax here. Mary Lemieux buys $1,000 bottles of wine every day and pays 6% sales tax. It's 10% here. This is meaningless. Why didn't you ask the guy from the Predators yesterday, hey, did the property tax going up 28% make you think about not coming here?
He did
It's
ask
cool.
him about the tax implications on one of the reasons why he came. We did address that
But
yesterday.
you're making a good point,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of other things to consider besides the state income tax.
I lived in Miami. I lived in Pittsburgh. In Detroit, I could walk in a store and get a free blunt. I'm not even allowed to smoke it here. There's more than just paying taxes.
Okay, Jerry, whatever your name is. Thank you for
I
calling.
understand some of what he's saying, but I think we may have gotten off the path here because we were trying to figure why can't the Titans take advantage?
Right. It's
Or,
not
you know,
not
of
my
the
it's not
tax
me
implication.
studying all these things.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm observing the common thing that has become a trend for the last 10 or 15 years in negotiations for hockey.
Mhm.
And it has become a source of competitive advantage, right? A debate about competitive advantage. And it doesn't seem to have the same thing in
No,
in
it doesn't.
football.
It doesn't. I mean, guys
I'm just looking
don't.
at the why. I'm not going through all of the benefits
the
of living in
benefits, yeah.
Canada versus
It's just it's
Nashville.
been more of a sort of a talking point
Yeah.
in the NHL, whereas in the NFL, I don't know how it is in the NBA because I'm not in those circles, but in the NFL, when it wasn't a big talking point, amongst players, but I'm sure that each individual player, if they were doing the right thing, they probably talked to their financial advisor and tried to get some, advice on, where to play if you had choices, where to play, where not to play, how would it affect me from a tax implication. But now they're starting to talk about it more. And I think all sports are starting to talk about it a little bit more. But I think hockey, it seems like they are the league that is at the front of it. Like, we ain't gonna make no qualms about it. Yeah, it does come into factor when we're picking teams. How much taxes are we gonna pay?
Right. And he's right. The sales tax is different because of
Exactly.
there's all these things that you probably should consider if you're really doing all of your homework.
It's not just the state tax.
I think Gary called just to belittle us a little bit.
He may be. I don't know.
Rude. Charlie on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Be nice, Charlie. Please go ahead.
I promise you I'll be nice. I'll even buy Gary a plane ticket back to Detroit.
Hey, my city's great, man.
Thank you, Charlie.
My home city's great.
Nothing wrong with Detroit.
I wanted to brag on Josh Jacobs. When he grew up, he had a hard time growing up, living homeless and whatnot at some points in his life. But he got drafted by the Oakland Raiders, and that guy deferred his signing bonus until they moved to Las Vegas because of taxes, you know. And that's, tell me if I'm wrong, but ain't that usually when you get your biggest chunk when you first sign, your signing bonus?
Yeah, typically, whether you are
Thank you for the call,
thank
Charlie.
you for the call, Charlie. Whether you are a rookie or a veteran, typically that signing bonus is that big chunk, and you know him doing that was smart on him because he knew he was leaving. He knew he was leaving a state that taxed you heavy on your income and going to the state that didn't. So I'm sure he and his financial people, they spoke with now the Vegas Raiders and let them know, hey, listen, this will benefit us if you defer it into the next following season.
Shohei Ohtani, when he signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers, deferred basically all of his salary, right?
A ton of it.
There's a ton, yeah, a bunch of it.
And Frank Vetrano, who is a forward for the Anaheim Ducks, signed a 3-year contract. I want to say early, maybe midway through the season, I can't remember exactly. But he, of course, also playing in California. The terms of his contract, $9 million of the $18 million are being deferred. He will receive an annual payment of $900,000 over a 10-year span beginning in 2035. So it's like it's been explained that it's a way around California's tax code by deferring that money. I think it probably also gets interest, right?
Well, that's you know, that's some of what the caller was saying from 2 calls ago. There's more than just, you know, the state income taxes. There are other things that kind of come into factor. How you defer it, can you defer it? How much can you defer? You know, and we don't claim to be, as he said, we're H&R Block. When we talk, people listen. Well, we hope that when we talk, people listen, but we're not here trying to give you, you know, we're not financial advisors, so we're not trying to give you expertise. It's just experiences I think we've been in, all of us, or have read about.
You hear Barry Trotz talk about destination city for Nashville. There's a lot to offer. You sell that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of these other teams who do live in, say, let's just use California because we have on a couple of these examples. I'm sure they have a way to combat all of these things, kind of like the caller, you know, Jerry or Gary was trying to combat it. Hey, man, you're not thinking this through. I'm sure you have to try to sell your area as best you can. But it is clearly in hockey, at least the trend, to think that these certain markets have an advantage, a competitive advantage when negotiating.
A few weeks ago, the Dallas Stars traded Mason Marchment to the Seattle Kraken. And it was reported that the Stars traded Marchment to the Kraken because they signed him, the Stars signed him to that contract in a no-tax state, and they shipped him off to Washington, which I think a lot of people don't realize is also a no-tax state. When we were talking about Jonathan Marchessault and whether he would be traded, we would have Elliot Freeman on the program. And what did he tell us? He probably wanted to be traded to a situation where he wasn't going to be taxed.
Right. And
Like,
he has
he is-
always played in a no-tax state.
Correct.
He is from Montreal, and there was a lot of, well, maybe Montreal would want him because they could use a veteran. They've got a young team. But then Elliot was like, that is something you would have to consider if you did it, because you would be taxed very differently. You would not be keeping as much of your paycheck
So it
if you went
matters.
from
It
Nashville
does.
to Montreal.
It absolutely matters in the NHL. Now, I do think that the influence of it on the Panthers championships and the Lightning's championships and the Golden Knights' championship, I believe it's exaggerated. It absolutely is an advantage. I don't think that's the reason why all of those teams won the Stanley Cup, but it absolutely matters in hockey. As I asked Nick Perbix yesterday, how much did the no tax situation in Tennessee, coming from a no tax state in Florida, impact your decision? And he didn't completely disregard it. He didn't say he didn't say it was the first thing, but he said it was part of the calculus in determining where he was going to go. But it is interesting, especially with the Titans. They have the same advantage the Predators do. It is interesting that you don't hear about it as much in football. And as Hutton said, between the Jaguars and the Titans, you know, it's the friendliest tax division in the NFL, apparently. Well, none of those teams are winning, so who's to say?
You got to start winning first.
Yes.
Before people are going to want to come in and get the tax benefits.
Right. We talked about this quickly. We talked about this with the Panthers. Like people weren't breaking down the Panthers' door to come play for them when they stunk.
Exactly.
Right.
Because-
They stunk for a while.
Yes. So it helps. It also helps if you're a good team playing in a no tax state. 615-737-1025. We'll continue to take your thoughts on this, the Titans, whatever you'd like. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
Do you have any doubts about your decision?
No, I don't have any doubts at all.
Would you like to sleep on it a little longer, or are you ready to make this decision?
No, I've slept enough, or the lack of sleep.
You still a nail biter?
I have a little bit, not of late.
Well, you've had everybody else biting their nails, so I guess it's time for them to stop chewing. The answer to the question everybody wants to know. LeBron, what's your decision?
In this fall, man, this is very tough. In this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat.
Miami Heat. That was the conclusion you woke up with this morning.
That was the conclusion I woke up with this morning.
Welcome into DVD. This is the 15th anniversary of The Decision. The Decision.
Mm-hmm.
The Decision.
It's so weird. That's a pretty common that we make decisions every day, right? But if you Google The Decision, one thing pops up. It's really interesting how that term is so iconic. LeBron James leaving Cleveland to go to Miami and doing it in a really unique, goofy, whatever, odd, and it created such a buzz. So we're going to talk about that a little bit in the next couple segments. But Derek, where were you the day of the decision by LeBron? Because I know exactly where I was.
Oh man, where was I? It was the off season. So
were you watching?
Yeah, I was watching on television just like everybody else. More than likely, I was at home watching everybody else, watching with everybody else. You know, when LeBron decided to, as he coined it, take his talents to South Beach. And ironically, that phrase, he should have trademarked that phrase, because that phrase has been used, you know, by other NBA players, high school players. You see it a lot, high school players, NFL players in free agency. You know, so that phrase that he said that one night has now been sort of the catchphrase for
right. People joke about it,
especially the kids that were signing letters of intent.
Yeah,
come out of high school to college. They use it. Seemed like everybody was using it then. So, but yeah, I was at home when that decision was made, and you know, my son, he wasn't too happy. He was a LeBron fan, so you know, being in Cleveland was a little bit closer to watch. But you know, hey, when he came back to Cleveland, we loved it because he could go to games then. It was a little bit closer.
Yeah, so we know there's a whole saga from that day. And, of course, in that moment, LeBron was absolutely vilified by Cleveland. He had all these people burning his jerseys and just heartbroken, all rage, all of those emotions. And now you ask somebody about it now, and they're like, well, it worked out okay. We got the championship in there, right? He came back. But that day was such a big day. And it, to me, signified a player of that magnitude in his sport realizing the leverage that you have. And, you know, the production of it, that was weird. And the
Boys and
the Jim
Girls
Gray
Club,
part of it, the Boys and Girls Club part of it, it was not executed well. It was lampooned a lot, has been since then.
Yes.
But I remember I was doing so for those that can go back on the show, I was just talking to George Plaster about this today. We had the annual charity Charles Davis Radiothon. Charles Davis, of course, grew up in Nashville, played at Vanderbilt, played in the NBA, and had a foundation for kids. And we would do a radiothon every year for it. And it was right in the middle of it. And we had to debate, are we going to stop the radiothon? Like we're trying to get the phones to ring, people donate, pledging. But that was the one time that we did that, where a sports story was big enough that we felt like we had to be mentioning it as it was going down. So that was definitely something I remember about that day. So I would love for people, if you want to join our phone and text line, 615-737-1025, phone and text driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. What do you remember about that? How has your admiration, do you root for LeBron? Did it change when you did that? Because I will say, fully on, I course, I have a lot of relatives from Ohio, and so I was hoping he would stay.
Mhm.
And so I did not root for the Heat. I didn't like the whole loading up of a team, and I rooted against the Heat. And I think I was probably in the majority, right? If you weren't a Heat fan, LeBron took a hit with his adoration at the time. And I think he knew when he came back to Cleveland, he was going to get a lot of that back. And so since then, I think he's regained a lot.
Oh,
right?
Of course.
But those years of the Heat, man, that was the team you wanted to see lose.
Yeah, because it wasn't that Cavs fans, I think now can, they can feel good about, okay, I don't hate him now that he left and went to the Heat because we got our championship, like you said, Willie. We got our championship. But also you look at that time, I don't even think, was Twitter really exploding back then?
No.
Not really.
No.
I don't think LeBron up until that point had a Twitter account or something
I don't
like that.
think.
Yeah.
I don't remember there being any social media.
No, there was no social
factor
media
that day.
and no, every hour on an hour, every second on a second, there was, up-to-date news as far as Twitter. Now,
it was all the anticipation
Yes.
of the telecast that was going to come on ESPN, right, and televise the decision.
exactly. So, but what I think what that did, and you may see it good or bad. That's not what I'm trying to sort of accomplish here, but I think it did sort of usher in the era of this player empowerment, the players deciding where I want to go, where I want to take, as LeBron said, my talent, and it crossed over. It wasn't just a basketball thing. It crossed over and it started to spill into football, baseball, hockey, other sports. It started to spill over where guys, mainly, I wouldn't say as much in hockey, but you saw it in other sports where it was like, I'm gonna hold this grandioso sort of press conference and then decide that, okay, this is where I'm going. LeBron set all of that off, whether it be good or bad. There became this marketing sort of push for other players to do it. ESPN started to pick it up more. Other Fox sports stations started to pick it up when guys, and it became so prevalent, especially in high school, that then once Twitter started to explode, you saw this everywhere.
I think it's more pronounced in basketball because one player can tip the scales so
Exactly.
much in a
Yeah.
basketball game. And I do think it started an era in the NBA of trying to find a way to get the big three together. And players started realizing, hey, I could do what LeBron
But
did.
Boston
And
started it
wasn't-
first.
They did.
But it wasn't, they didn't have the name. They had some really good players all going to Boston with Paul Pierce being there already. You had Kevin Garnett. You had what's the shooter?
Ray
Ray
Allen
Allen
going
was the
there.
third, yeah.
And
They
then they already
were
had
considered a big three.
Rondo.
Yeah.
They already had Rondo. So that was the original sort of big three, but they didn't have the LeBron James name attached to him.
Yeah, that was a creative move by Danny Ainge who was the GM, that definitely started a trend.
Yes.
To say, hey, wait, because it was hard to do what they did. People were like, how did they pull that off with the salary cap and all of that? But I think LeBron was the first player to start to say, I'm putting myself out there. And also intertwined in this is, and I don't know how much he thought that part of it through, but the whole LeBron versus Michael debate that will always be part of the fun lingo. Start a debate with your buddy.
It didn't douse the Flames at all. It did
not at all. And he did win with the Heat. But Michael Jordan people will always say Jordan stayed. It's more valuable. It's more meaningful if you stay with the team that drafted you as they build around you and you win. And that's what was heartbreaking. It didn't seem quite as meaningful because he left and he joined forces with the big three there with Dwayne Wade and Bosh. And that's a great debate. Is Bosh really a big three guy? He was pretty good.
He was
at the
a
time.
double-double.
He was really good.
He was a good player.
But it was a loaded team. And so you have a little bit of a boost if you do it the way that Jordan did it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, because they figure that, okay, you sort of did it the homegrown way. Scottie Pippen was a draft pick to go with Jordan many years ago. You had other guys, B.J. Armstrong, even though was he on that first Jordan? Yeah, he was on the first Jordan championship. B.J. Armstrong was a draft pick of the Chicago Bulls.
So they built it together.
So they built it
took
together.
a while.
Exactly.
They climbed the mountains.
But that second run, that's when they brought in the Dennis Rodmans and the Ron Harpers.
They turned over most of the roster.
Exactly. Absolutely. So that's why I think when they start discussing that topic in particular, Jordan will always sort of get the nudge as far as the whole, because he did it with a team that was put together mainly by draft picks the first time.
Yeah.
And those draft picks helped on the second three-peat too, Scottie Pippen, because BJ wasn't on that second three-peat stage of Michael's career. So, but the way LeBron did it ushered in, the way other players start to look at it, especially from a basketball standpoint. And even, would you even say, Willie, that not only did it become sort of prevalent amongst superstar players, but you started to see GMs trying to form their own big three, at least in basketball, they're trying to form their own big three because they know, well, if that team has their big three, we got to find a way to put together our big three.
Yeah, kind of like the 76ers.
Exactly,
with,
absolutely.
Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, those guys.
I think there was a copycat aspect. And I think now with analytics and innovation, there is a better sense of you don't have to do it that way. You can build differently. There's more ways to win now, which was great, which I think has made the league very compelling. There's more parity now than there was. It used to be just a race of which 5 or 6 teams could get the big three, and then you knew you were going to be in it every year. If you had LeBron, you knew the Heat was going to be in there. The Warriors ended up with their kind of version of it with Steph, but it became very difficult for anybody else to get in there. Like all the other teams were like, well, we can't get to that. We don't have a big three, so we got to tank or hope that we win the lottery, that kind of thing.
You know what it forced the league to do?
Is innovate.
It forced them to understand that we need at least 3 guys on our team to have a legitimate shot at winning a championship, because every 5 games, one guy has to pick up for the other. Or if I'm not having a good quarter, at least we had this guy or these 2 guys that can pick up the slack. No longer can you have one guy and then just a bunch of just mediocre. Even the Golden State Warriors, they had Clay, Draymond, and Steph. Steph was the head. Well, Draymond was really the head right there because he controlled a lot of what they do.
Sure.
But it doesn't take, I'm not saying that he was a better player than Steph, but everything ran through Draymond. Exactly. Offensively and defensively.
Yeah.
So when you have 3 guys like that, the slack can be, sort of picked up by the other 2 if one guy's not on. But if you don't at least have 3 guys, it's hard to consistently win.
And if you're just joining the conversation, we just had somebody on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com going, why are you guys talking about LeBron? Well, today is the 15th anniversary of the decision. So we're talking about how it's affected sports since then and the player empowerment. Now, I don't think anybody really leveraged it quite the way LeBron did prior to LeBron. Can you think of anybody?
Prior? Well, Michael sort of, kind of. Those that I'm talking about the second three-peat when he was only signing 1-year deals,
right,
with Chicago.
Yep, he definitely
to
used
make sure they brought in guys that could help him win. So he used it,
and then that's The Last Dance talks a lot about that.
Yeah.
He thought that they would buckle and keep Phil Jackson, keep Scottie Pippen, and they didn't do it.
No,
and they completely sunk to the bottom immediately after that. That's a pretty compelling thing. So you're right to a point, but what do you think? Like, I think we look at Kevin Durant
Mhm.
as a guy who's bounced around, but he's used his player empowerment to sort of dictate where he wants to go. It hasn't been as fruitful as it has for LeBron, who went to Miami for 2, went back to Cleveland, then went to LA, and he's compiled championships that way.
Here's the thing with Kevin Garnett. I mean, not Kevin Garnett, but Kevin Durant, excuse me. As great as Kevin Durant is, he's not LeBron when he's making everybody else great around him. So when LeBron or Michael Jordan, use their leverage, it benefits the whole team because they're going to make those other guys better. Like they're just going to make the team better. We see it. As good as Kevin Durant is, that's the knock on him. Like he doesn't make
everybody better.
Exactly. So he has that empowerment that was first given. Let's say it. For what it is. LeBron gave today's player the ability to call his or her own shot if you had that ability.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm thinking of other examples in sports. Would you say that Aaron Rodgers has, to some degree, and it's the thing about the LeBron decision was that it was in the prime of his career.
Yes.
He was right in the prime. Aaron Rodgers was past his prime, but he still sort of leveraged his player empowerment, right?
He had it. He had it, but it wasn't to LeBron's status, but he still had it. But he messed it up. Because of sort of these other antics, if he had the personality of Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, he undoubtedly would have been the LeBron James if he had their personality. Like, okay, I'm not going to be in Green Bay. I can call my shot with any team, and there would have been teams on board, even the teams that probably really didn't need him. But they figured if we had them, we're going to win the championship. They would have been there too. But because of the personality and attitude, there are a lot of teams like, no, we don't want to deal with it.
Right. I can't think of too many NFL players who have had any version of LeBron.
I think the one guy that had the potential outside of the quarterback, I'm taking it outside of the quarterback hands because I think Lamar was close to it. I think Patrick could have, if he really wanted to, press the issue, he could have. Tom
Lamar Jackson, he definitely flirted with
exactly.
it. Right? He did have quite a bit of leverage, and it was quite a debate going on.
But the NFL,
but it was resolved.
Yeah, the NFL is
the collusion,
thing.
Yeah.
So the NFL is going to make sure, wink, wink, we're going to, allegedly keep this thing where it needs to be. But outside of the quarterbacks, the one person that I think was probably close to it, I think it was Jefferson. I think Jefferson was the guy that out of Minnesota, he was probably, to me, that one guy that was probably close to that LeBron sort of, because just look at his numbers, man. He shattered every number a receiver could have had in his first, it's been 6 years. He shattered every record.
It's harder for a guy at the NFL to do it.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Because to do what LeBron
and that's
said,
outside of a quarterback.
You want to get paid well, and you want to leverage to go to a team that's loaded and can win.
Myles Garrett, possibly.
He tried,
yeah,
but it didn't work.
Yeah, it didn't work. You're right.
Jamar, could he have
Jamar Chase?
Could he have done it?
Could he have done it?
The problem is you have to find a team that is set to win, but also has the salary cap space to take on your contract.
You know why it's harder to do it? I don't know, like basketball, the contracts, how they're set up and all this other stuff and how but because of the franchise tag, it's hard to do it. Even when your contract is up, it's not up because I can franchise tag you.
Yeah.
And it makes it hard for you to maneuver to another team.
Yep, that's a good point.
So that's why I think they should have taken. If I'm players, I'm like, I don't want no franchise tag. After the first year, you can franchise me once. After that, I don't want you. You shouldn't be able to do it.
I don't think the players thought that through very well when that first came up. The whole franchise tag. it probably sounded good to the players
Yeah.
on the surface. And now you're kind of wishing it wasn't there. And every collective bargaining agreement, they don't fight to get rid of it.
Nah,
It's still there.
because it's
So that's a
money.
good point. So when we come back, we're going to talk about a player who I think you can draw parallels to LeBron at the stage of his career, and it's Connor McDavid. Could Connor McDavid do this? I think the answer is yes. And we'll go through the similarities and but also what's different, and what do you think Connor McDavid will do? Because to do what LeBron did, you are the A+ number one guy in your sport in your
You're the
prime.
apex predator.
And you are going, and he was able to go to a team that was loaded to win. And it worked in his favor for 2 championships, sacrificing all of the love of Cleveland and all that stuff. There's a price to be paid, but it was successful. Could Connor McDavid do it? I think the answer is yes. Will he do it? There doesn't seem to be much momentum for it, at least now. But could it happen in another year or two? We'll talk about when we come back. But if you have thoughts on this, 615-737-1025. We want to hear from you. Call us, text us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025. We're talking about the 15th anniversary of The Decision. Yes, Jim Gray. Jim Gray is not going to come on our show today, which is probably relief to hear. Stay tuned. We're coming back.
But we also know you 3 kings came down here to win championships. Not 1, championships.
Not 2.
LeBron, tell us about that.
Not 2, not 3, not 4,
not 5, not 6, not 7. Hey, and when I say that, I really believe it.
LeBron. Yeah, that quote also
one,
got
to.
had legs.
Yeah.
It's memorable.
And it made people hate him even more.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. Now, we're talking about the 15th anniversary, the legacy of the decision that LeBron made. And so now I want to bring it back here. We're back here on DVD, 1025 The Game. Would love for you to join us on this discussion. 615-737-1025. Because here's what got me thinking about all this. Connor McDavid is in a similar position in hockey as LeBron was back then at that stage of his career. LeBron was playing for a small market team. It was his hometown team in Cleveland. They had won a lot, but it was very clear that they didn't have the horses around him where he would look ahead the next few years and say, can we win it? Can I win it here? And that had to be part of why he decided to leave and make a very tough decision to go. So let's look at Connor McDavid. Now, he's not from Edmonton, but he is Canadian, right? Connor McDavid is the undisputed best player in hockey right now, and it's really not close. And there are a lot of great players in the NHL, but he's the best. LeBron, at the time he made the decision, was 25, and he had played 7 years in the league with Cleveland. And like McDavid, they both jumped right in as an 18, 19-year-old player. Connor McDavid has now played 10 years in the league.
Oh, man.
But he's only 20. He's 28. And like LeBron and Cleveland, they've been close. But they haven't had, to me, a loaded team that can win it. Now, we know the salary cap rules are different. It's a hard salary cap for Edmonton. But I think Connor McDavid would be silly not to at least ask the question, what are my better chances of winning a cup or 2 or 3 or 4? I'm not going to go up to 7. But he is 1 year away from free agency. Most people believe he is going to sign some form of an extension to stay with the Oilers. I do think he feels a sense of loyalty, but he wants to win. He, like LeBron, is driven. And what do you always say about Michael Jordan?
He was
Derek,
a competitor.
it's not just the talent.
Yeah.
It's the best of the
drive.
best have the talent and that unreal edge competitively. McDavid's got that.
But don't you? Okay.
What do you do? Like most people, Elliot Friedman on his last podcast, I don't know if you guys asked him on the last interview he had last week with us, but he says, he said, I'm not, quote, worried about it. He's going to re-sign with the Oilers. The question is, how many years? But why wouldn't you walk it up to free agency and do what LeBron did to sort of use the leverage that you have as a player, the player empowerment? Why wouldn't you do that?
Because for this reason, and I could be totally off base about this, because just knowing the little that I know about the hockey culture, one, hell, he's playing with another potential Hall of Famer in Leon Draisaitl. So,
right, but he's been playing with them.
Yeah, he's been playing with Draisaitl the whole time. So, I mean, you just need one more person if you're trying to get a big 3. But they obviously the team's good enough. They've been, they've gotten to a point where they've been on the brink of winning a championship. So it's not like they are a bad team, like you're saying. Just like Cleveland, maybe because of the influence that you have, not just within your sport but globally. It can allow you, like LeBron, to sort of put together this sort of theatrical, deal where you get to pick, where you want to go. But I think I'm not sure I'm not sure it will go over well, because I think hockey fans, especially Edmonton fans, if he does that, I'm not sure he would ever be allowed back. Because I think their fan base is just different. They're different. It would
be tough.
It's like your family. Like, you don't lead the family.
and it is to a degree, it would be history repeating itself because Wayne Gretzky was traded, but
Wayne was traded.
He was traded, but this was one of the early 30 for 30s.
Mm-hmm.
It does talk about sort of the dynamics involved that, I think Wayne Gretzky stayed above the fray and was not on the record of, you got to trade me. But beneath the surface, I think he was kind of willing to get traded.
Okay.
But he was never made out to be the bad guy because he was traded and didn't
See,
walk
Connor
in free
McDavid
agency.
would come out as being the
Like
bad
I
guy,
remember when
bad guy.
Shaq walked in free agency in Orlando and how tough that was for Orlando when he went to LA, right? Because Orlando had a good team.
Yeah.
But McDavid, I think you're right. There's definitely a loyalty that pulls at a player like him. And I'm sure it did for LeBron, but obviously not that much because he did it.
He went where the players were.
But he has the ability to walk up into the last year of his contract and kind of put it out there to his team. You've got to make the decisions. We've got to win. It's number one priority. And if it's not here, I've got to go somewhere else where my chances might be better.
Now tell me, Willie, do they, and this is a reason why I think he can do it. Should he do it? I don't know, but he can do it. They don't have like a franchise tag, do they? Or is it called something else where once your contract expires, you can then hold on to it for another year until you try to work out a contract? Do they have something in place like that?
So his options on July, he is now eligible to sign an extension. And that's what everybody in Edmonton, I think, is now starting the clock of, let's please get this done this summer so we don't get into the season.
Yeah.
And you know what a lot of players do? Once the season starts, we're not going to talk about contract. That's all he would need to say. And then there would be probably a panic and a wait.
And they're not going to trade him.
And that, I think this is something that McDavid has to weigh is that does enter into the equation. It'll be a story every day. Hey, have you talked to your agent lately? Have you any more talks about an extension? So a lot of players don't want that weight on their shoulders while the season's going. Because like you said, then all of a sudden it's like, well, if he's not going to sign, should they trade him?
Yeah.
But I don't know that they would because they are going to feel like they have a chance to win it. They've been very close.
If they trade him, Edmonton will always be the bad guy because Connor McDavid will say, in his mind, I'm exercising my rights as a player. I didn't say that I wouldn't sign with Edmonton. I wanted them to do more, but they chose to trade me. So like Wayne Gretzky, you come off as the good guy. And it's like, I didn't want this, but I wanted to make sure this team was in a position that if I did sign back, that we were going to be able to more than likely win the championship. I think he can do it, but he can only do it if he doesn't. He has to stick to it. If he's made up in his mind, I'm going to force them to do this. I'm not signing another contract this year. And next year, we'll worry about next year then. He has the ability to do it, but does he want to? Is that where he want to put his energy?
A lot of people think he's going to sign about a 2-year extension, maybe 3, and then revisit it when he's still got enough in the tank to hold the option open of testing the market when he's, say, 31 or 32. But to me, that would be on LeBron. That would be that would still be a pretty hefty commitment to Edmonton. I think you could argue, if you follow hockey, that kind of like LeBron with the Cavs 15 years ago today, he looked on the horizon and said, the teams in the next 2 or 3 years aren't going to be loaded. So am I better off going somewhere else where, and obviously the unique situation with the Heat was unfolding with Pat Riley and all those guys orchestrating it. And the Celtics had already done it. He said, well, this is where I can go. McDavid, I look at the Oilers team. They haven't had the goalie. They're going to have the same goalies next year as they had this year. That's been an Achilles heel that they've had to overcome. Matthias Ekholm's a year older. Yeah, they're going to have Draisaitl, but now Draisaitl is going to make way more money. The cap is going up. But he's going to, but so is McDavid's salary and Draisaitl's salary. They don't have young players on the way through. They've mortgaged the future to try to win now. I think if you're unbiased and not an Oiler fan, and you're talking to McDavid and say, take your loyalty away from Edmonton for a second, because I do think that pulls at him. He wants to do it for the team that drafted him. I think in a perfect world. But if you say, hey, man, I don't know if it's so much up to you and Draisaitl to have to do everything. And I know you've been close, but the team around you is getting weaker. It's not getting stronger.
I think this would happen. Because, and the only reason I'm saying is, and I'm not saying that Connor McDavid is more popular than LeBron James. That's not what I'm saying, because I'm sure that LeBron James is more popular than Connor McDavid. But because of the time that LeBron was in when he did his, there were a lot of people watching. Everybody tuned in, but you had to watch it. I think with the advent, social media, all this other stuff, it would be a bigger story because of the time we are in.
Yeah.
If Connor McDavid said, you know what, I am not signing with Edmonton. I am going to go into free agency and I'm going to pull a LeBron James. Every sports station around will pick up on it. Every
It would be
Twitter,
enormous.
it would be huge.
Yeah. And it would be a countdown if he really stuck to it.
Uh-huh.
And the drama that the league would get, I think it would
the
reach
league
into
would love
not-
it.
Yeah, I think the league would love a story like that in some way.
Yeah.
Uh,
Even if he does go back to Edmonton.
if he even, you're right. I think that's 100%.
Even if he said, you know what, I'm going to take my talents and keep them here in Edmonton.
Right, which is what every Cavalier
Exactly.
fan thought hopefully he was going to do. And then 5 minutes later, they're burning the jerseys.
Exactly.
Right. But that, I mean, just think about the possibilities there. And Dave on our text line says, if Edmonton doesn't somehow add a top tier goalie, McDavid is gone. Well, they're not going to add a top tier goalie. They don't have the money. And most teams, if basically all teams, and this again goes to our UC Saros conversation, they're not letting good goalies go these days.
No. So
the best goalie on the market, you tell me, free agents, they're not out there. So Edmonton is stuck with their guys who are average at best, and they have a lot of cap issues that they're trying to juggle like they have every year. They don't have young talent coming in. McDavid, I think, if I were advising him, what's the best way to win a championship? It would be to play out another year with the Oilers and then see what the market looks like and find a team. The other unique part of this is the cap is going up. And teams are in another year should have a little more flexibility, especially if he said this year, I'm not signing an extension.
Oh, man.
Teams would start preparing. Oh, if
Yes.
McDavid hits the market, we got to think about that. How would we be able to make our pitch to McDavid? I think that would really be something to do. If his sole purpose is what's the best way
to win a
to
championship.
join up and win a championship, he could dictate everything. And he'd have
and that's why I said it would be from that standpoint, player empowerment standpoint too. I think it, because of the day and age we are in, if LeBron could take off 20 years, 15 years of his life and do it now, it would be a humongous story everywhere. I mean, local news, big news. Anyway, I think Connor McDavid, if that does happen, it will get to that point where he's the most talked about individual in sports because of who he is. He's the apex predator in hockey and the global influence from that standpoint that he has.
And I think he would reach another, if he went to a market like New York or LA or Chicago, God forbid it be Chicago. Let's please not even think about that. But you would reach a section of sports fans in general that would pay more attention because of the drama of it all to hockey than ever had before. People still to this day talk about what Wayne Gretzky did for the game going to LA. There were a lot of people that didn't pay much attention to hockey. Maybe they did a little bit, but he got a new level of fan, the celebrity part of it. And it helped the league as a whole. most people think there wouldn't be a Nashville Predators. There wouldn't be teams in Florida, in the Sun Belt, if that trade hadn't happened. I think McDavid, it wouldn't be on that level, but I think he could get the league to another level of viewership if he went from Edmonton to a big market.
Yeah, in the States.
Yeah.
But listen, the NHL could only cross their fingers and hope that this happens. That,
Right.
No, I'm serious. It's and even if he goes back to Edmonton, they can only wish. And if I'm Gary Bettman, in the backgrounds, I'm thinking like, okay, the big play. I'm looking at the long play here. We probably need to try to make this happen. Not necessarily him leaving, but the thought of Connor McDavid coming to your city to play. That
Create
would
the decision part 2.
Man, hockey, hockey
the
would
hockey
have
decision.
It would be everywhere. If I'm Gary Bettman, I would be hoping for this.
Yeah.
I would love this.
Oh man, would he ever? And you would have all kinds of discussion of what teams are in the best position to bring in somebody like him and have the pieces to win. And you could debate on who that is. You still have to work within a salary cap. It would be an amazing story. But I think the bottom line is he shouldn't do it for the league's sake. He should do it for his own sake. And this is nothing against Edmonton, but I still look at the team going forward. Are his chances of winning a cup getting better or worse year by year? And I don't think they're getting better. I think they're getting worse.
So
they're going to have to, I don't know how they're going to do it.
So here's a question for you, Willie, and we can kind of answer it as we're segueing out of the show for today. Is there, outside of, because we're talking about Connor McDavid now, is there a player that is in a contract now or potentially that can reshape the way you look at that particular sport? Is there a player out there right now that you say if their contract just mysteriously like ended today and they had to get a new one, this one player can reshape the landscape of their particular sport? Is there a guy like that?
Yeah.
Now, we talked about Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
It could happen.
I think like Messi in soccer kind of did it on his level, right? There's probably an occasional soccer player that I couldn't tell you all the guys, but there are soccer players that have worldwide, because there's so much money. They have that kind of leverage. But I think here in our sphere, if you're not talking about global soccer, I think McDavid's positioned as well as anybody who could dictate. He's the best player who has the opportunity in another year to pick his team. And most people think he's not going to do it, that he's loyal enough to stay with the Oilers. I think it's a pretty unique story. So we thought today, on the anniversary of the decision, I don't think McDavid he would not sit down with Jeff.
McDavid
he would not sit down with Jim Gray.
He'd sit down with Elliot Friedman.
I don't think he would do that. I think he's a little wired a little bit different. And I still wonder if LeBron today would go back and say, yeah, that was a little rich. I probably should have done it a little differently.
Have he talked? I know he's spoken about
he probably has.
And I think he may have said he probably would have did some things different. I don't know. But I honestly, I looked at it. I didn't see much wrong he did outside of like, man, you're holding Cleveland captive, man. It's like, man, they won a championship so bad, and you're just, you're leaving. Everybody, it was like LeBron's leaving. He's not staying. That's the only part. But outside of that, I mean, I thought he brought, awareness to the Boys and Girls Club, and he ultimately went where he thought he can have the biggest impact, and he did.
Will from Nashville on our text line said, I lived in Cleveland when the decision came down. I really thought there would be a riot after that. And there wasn't a riot, but there were plenty of clips, local news of people doing some pretty crazy stuff.
They were upset, boy.
And one other texter says, maximum chaos, said Adam Thingenturn. McDavid to Calgary. Okay. Arch rival of the Oilers. I don't know about that.
I don't think you could do that.
I
don't think you could do that.
All right, when we come back, we'll have our final segment, and we will pass the baton here on this July afternoon. Stay tuned. You're listening to DVD. Coming down the home stretch here on DVD, D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick. Adam Vingan had to head out just a little bit early today. We were talking about Connor McDavid, and could he be the decision part 2, the hockey decision? Could he do what LeBron did 15 years ago today, if he wanted to, and just play out and have all of the leverage, the best player in the world in his sport who could go and dictate where he wanted to go like LeBron did? And David James, I got to give him credit on this. The ultimate chaos, the Adam Vingan Award, would be for him to
I'm taking my talents to South Beach.
and Connor McDavid goes to Florida and plays for the Panthers, the team that has beaten his team in the last 2 Stanley Cup finals. But I don't think that's going to happen. But you know what? You never know.
It could be the chaos. It would just be the theater of it would be great.
Oh, yeah. And you can't help but ask the question here in this city. The Predators do have an enormous amount of salary cap space that they would have next summer because they're still paying Matt Duchene a pretty good chunk right now that they have to pay the tab on. They're still paying Kyle Turris. Yes, they're still paying. It's not quite Bobby Bonilla, but Kyle Turris is like the Nashville version of Bobby Bonilla to some extent. But that said, they have a lot of expiring contracts this year, even though a lot of people are like, well, they've got all these contracts to all these veterans. Really, if you take a look, they have a lot of flexibility. I do think, just like any other team would, if this somehow presented itself, that they would throw their hat in the ring big time to try to go get him. I don't know if they could convince him. And they could, what they would sell, I think, would be, we've got the goalie, unlike your former team.
Yes.
We have a lot of young players who are about to become relevant, we think. You know, the farm system we've been hearing about that still aren't there. But at the end of this coming season, they would be of age where they might make a pretty good set of complimentary guys. And those guys, when they're young, are cheap.
Now, who contracts will come off the books?
Well, the guys who come off the books are a lot of the role players right now. And they just traded a couple of them, but I'll pull it up real quick.
Because I think that would sort of determine
it would create a lot of space. The contracts that the players in the last year of their contract: Michael Bunting, Eric Halla, Cole Smith, Fedor Svechkov, who I would presume they would keep for a cheap price. Michael McCarron is another guy that I think could be an attractive fourth line center that they could trade at the deadline if they didn't want him, or keep him for a pretty inexpensive price. Justin Barron, Nick Blankenberg. So they've got the flexibility
because
and there's not too much money tied up, especially with the cap going up. The contracts like Forsberg and Stamkos and Marchessault at 5.5 and O'Reilly at 4.5. That's not a ton of money that is being just scooped up, especially with the cap going up.
Yeah, if indeed it got to that point,
and this is a total
hypothetical, people. This is hypothetical.
The hockey decision.
Yeah.
We're allowed to have it.
The hockey decision.
Come on,
in
July
lieu
8th.
of it
July
being,
9th.
15 years since
the
since the decision by LeBron James to leave Cleveland and take his talents to South Beach. We're trying to create sort of that same thing with Connor McDavid because he has 2 years left this year and next year left on his contract, and he would be the most sought after free agent since Shohei Ohtani. You know, really since Shohei Ohtani.
Ohtani definitely was in the ballpark.
Exactly.
He had a lot of leverage and he jumped in there. So I don't know. He certainly didn't do it with the fanfare that LeBron did, but he was that type of impact player. And of course, the Dodgers came up with a creative way of selling him with the deferred money and all of that.
So if Nashville, because the good part about it is you wouldn't have to give up anything to get him. You would just have to pay him. In theory, you would just have to pay him.
And that brings
could
up
they
another,
do that, and would they do that if the opportunity they need to? If the opportunity presented itself, why wouldn't you? You have to throw out an offer. You have to.
You've got to get into the game.
Yeah.
All right, that'll do it for us today.
So I'm giving Predator fans hope.
McDavid will be a Predator 2026, 27.
So you're telling me
D-May
there's a
says
chance.
it's done. It's a done deal.
Yes.
All right, Stillman and Company. Jared is on vacation, but we've got, again, the capable hands of our crew is ready to go. They are ready to go. We're passing the baton.
Ready to roll.
Who we got back there? Jake, Connor,
And Parker.
and Parker.
Right.
The three amigos.
The
Three
three
amigos.
amigos, who Adam said earlier
Isn't
this
that
week have an
three of
average
the-
age of 16 and a half.
Isn't that
17 and a
three?
half.
It's actually 17 and a half.
That's three of the Force Company, right? It's three of them.
Two.
Oh, it's only two of them.
Yeah, only two of them.
Because Parker's not. He's not that cool
he's
yet.
Not, he's not that.
He's not that cool
He's
yet.
not that level yet.
He's going to be that new character they introduced on the sitcom.
Exactly.
He walks in the door. He's like, "What's up, guys?" Oh.
All right, we're back at you tomorrow at 11.
Be love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, and wonderful Wednesday. Peace.